The story began with the hero. Alan unleashed his strongest attack on the monsters with a holy sword. Although this technique required so much mana that it had to be almost completely released. To solve this, our protagonist Ishua constantly monitored to repeatedly open mana for Alan after all. His job was in monoporter. I don't know, but it is said that support is carried not only by Alan, likewise other members of the heroic party, the magic swordsman, the saint, and the sage. Thanks to Ishua continuously replenishing their mana, they could incessantly use the strongest attacks without worrying about consequences or excessive mana consumption. It could even repair the magic sword if such a need arose during battles. And it also helped a lot in the healing part. It transferred the saint, charging her with enough holy magic so that she could continue casting her healing spells. Ishua was confident that they would win as long as everyone in the party had full mana. He was like an unbreakable support for the entire party, so they always managed to complete any quest they took on. But after a few days, Alan suddenly kicked Ishua out of the party without warning. Ishua was stunned by the sudden dismissal, and he tried to make Alan understand. If Ishua is kicked out, the party's mana will quickly run out and they will suffer losses. And Alan never intended to bother with verification, and believed that at the beginning the party never lacked mana. Ishua tried to prove that they noticed nothing because he never made it obvious, but Alan did not believe it. For some ordinary monoporter to have such power, he simply was not going to admit it. It seems the main reason Alan hated Ishua was that he envied all the girls at the party, those who stared at him, and indulged some worthless guy like Ishua. Alan then lied to him as if it was a joint decision of the whole party. Ishua was no longer needed. Ishua found it incredible and it hurt him. Because he was just told to leave exactly like that. After that, Ishua turned around and walked away. I still feel bitterness because I was expelled so unexpectedly. He recalled, the work of a mana porter is labor that thrives at a party where a lot of mana is consumed. During battle, they must provide enough mana to others. Since they mostly stay in the background, people often devalue them like Alan, who showed no respect to Ishua at all. However, Ishua could not calm down even at the banquet. Its participants were considered heroes, saints, sages, and magical swordsmen, and each of them sucked too much mana. Ishua worried that during battles they would not be able to fight effectively and would also save mana. And if expelling him really was the decision of everyone, then nothing can be done. So Ishua was called from his place. One of the participants, Arya, addressed him senpai. And he did not at all expect that she would uncontrollably rush straight to him and at high speed hit him with her chest. Show something like, I miss this sweet scent of a woman. Meanwhile, he asked Arya what she was doing here and she questioned him why he suddenly abandoned them all. Saint Arya had long called Ishua senpai back when she was his junior at the academy. Ishua asked her why she decided that he abandoned them, although at first it was the decision of everyone else to expel him. Arya could not understand how that could be at all if everyone relied on him so much in mana. Ishua said that it was true exactly as Alan said. Hearing this, Arya became so angry that, although she was a saint, a dark aura began to swirl around her. She was furious because of that insolent hero who goes around causing trouble for her senpai. Ishua sighed with relief, seeing that Arya understood him and that in fact he did not want to leave her that much. Adria said that she came here primarily to take senpai back, but now decided just to stay close and from now on follow him. Ishua was stunned. He knew that it had always been her dream to get into the hero's party, but Arya stubbornly refused to be near the hero who expelled Ishua senpai. She knew it too, he had been helping her since their student days, and it was thanks to him that she became who she is today. So she asked Ishua to take her with him. Ishua felt sincere intentions in her request, so he agreed to take her with him. However, he was curious how she found out where he was. Arya hesitated when she answered. She said she just happened to come across Senpai's hair and she used it for search magic to find him. Ishua doubted. Is she really a saint if such behavior suits witches who practice black magic more? Magic? They continued walking along the path, and she asked what they would do next. Ishua thought to head to the nearest town to prepare for their journey, and at that moment they came across people shouting for help. Karu seemed to be attacked by some wolf monsters. Ishua decided to help them, and Arya knew he would say exactly that. They jumped into the center and it was. The problem was that he told Arya, take care of these monsters while he poured mana into her. These wolf demons were B-rank monsters, ones that should be too tough for beginners. And Ishua remained calm and relaxed. He was confident that against a saint like Arya they would not stand a chance. However, Arya seems to have overextended her attack and is essentially going to use top-level magic just to deal with these wolves. She even cast several enchantments on her strike to keep the attack's power under control. Quickly assessing her magical circles, she adjusted the quality of the magic she infused so that her attack wouldn't be too destructive for the entire area. When he finished countering the overpower move, Arya released an innocent shine attack over the entire area around them. Other people, even monsters, looked at the beam of light, blinking in confusion. When it cracked and exploded, covering everything around them like a blast. Even undead monsters hundreds of meters away were hit by the holy attack of Saint Arya. This leads to the cleansing of the entire path within range. When everything calmed down, Arya innocently chuckled and asked Ishua how her new magic was working. Ishua told her that she had gone too far. She removed impurities around the entire area so strongly that she literally made it a sacred place. She giggled endlessly, and he, resigned, only hoped that she would learn to keep her powers under control and not get so excited like that. Merchants wondered who those two were. After this, he led them to the nearest village, and Ishua sincerely thanked him. The merchant insisted that he simply wanted to repay them for saving his life. And he added, he was seeing such powerful mages for the first time, and even someone capable of transmitting magic so masterfully. Arya did not hold back and boasted. Only her senpai is capable of this, the one who makes the impossible possible. But even she could not activate a spell of such scale on her own. She said that Ishua has an infinite supply of mana, and he can understand high-level magic at first glance and optimize or adjust its power to the needs. He truly was worthy of being called a superhuman. Then the waitress brought Hugh nuts, and the merchant told her not to serve unpeeled nuts to their lifesavers. She apologized to the boss for this and said that recently their mana is really running out, so they need to start the refineries. Ishua asked the man about the mana shortage. He replied that since their village is small, they could not properly maintain the oil refineries, not to mention the agricultural equipment, which ultimately makes their devices useless and forces them to spend a lot of money on maintenance they cannot afford. This is where they hit a dead end. If this continues, their village may not survive. Arya and Ishua looked at each other as if they were thinking the same thing. Ishua told this man that he would help them with the mana shortage. The man was almost embarrassed to ask Ishua for so much help despite the fact that he had already helped him once. Arya assured him everything is fine. Because her elder was of too kind a disposition and simply could not leave someone in need without help. Ishua set off for the oil refinery and immediately saw that everything there was in an extremely terrible condition. The man admitted that they had long been unable to maintain the maintenance. The problem of the oil refinery was noticed up close, and he decided that he could handle such a volume. He placed his hands on the tank and began charging it with magic until it was completely filled. Everyone was shocked when they saw how he filled all the mana containers at once, although it was not supposed to be so easy for any person. Ishua knows this too, so he continued to train later, learning to put mana into inanimate objects. After all, he had to take care of the magical sword of his party and the rest of the equipment. While he was doing this, Ishua also added attributes capable of cleaning dirt from the containers. As soon as he finished, the entire neglected place turned into a completely newly built oil refinery. And the peasants were amazed. You didn't just fix or refill the mana in the containers. He also cleaned the rust and repaired weak spots so that everything would work smoothly and without failures for a long time. Ishua added a few things as if hoping that the mechanism would hold in place for many years, although he stubbornly considered himself an amateur in this matter. But the peasants corrected him. It was far from that. He had done work that would usually require dozens of the best engineers. The peasants were burning with the desire to know his name. Ishua introduced himself as an ordinary porter mama. But the man would consider himself normal after all. He had seen with his own eyes how incredible Ishua was. He also asked Arya about her, and she answered with her name and the title of a saint. She carried herself with the aura of a saintly woman and a smile, introducing herself. The peasant froze in place upon hearing this, and involuntarily concluded that if Ishua goes with a saint, then he must be a hero. He was sure of this and apologized for his belated gratitude to the hero. Ishua shuddered and rushed to ask Arya to help him correct the peasant's misunderstanding. Anya was already lost in her own world, imagining that she and Senpai would make the perfect couple. If she wanted, she would return to her usual sacred essence, but not a word about that. The villagers had already decided to hold a celebration for the hero who saved their village. Ishua tried to explain to them that it was a misunderstanding. And this is what made the villager conclude. The hero was too modest and maybe even hiding his own circumstances to disguise his position. They even liked that the hero did not pretend to be a good guy, unlike various scoundrels who pretend to be heroes only for profit. Ishua simply gave up. The villagers would not listen to what he said anyway. Then Arya rushed at him and declared him her hero. Ishua was nervous she was too close. But she seemed indifferent, most likely she was drunk. Ishua also noticed her exhausted state and immediately understood she had already started drinking. He told the villagers not to let Arya drink much. She could not handle alcohol, but she was already at zero, all savings were gone. She even dared to kiss just the senpai. The celebration turned out to be glorious for everyone, but not for poor Ishua. Meanwhile, somewhere else in front of the dungeon where the verdict awaited, Alan was running through a plan in his head. How to take that fortress with just the three of them. Midia and Ritaru, magical swordbearers and the party sage, decided that going alone into the dungeon, which could hardly be called safe, was better avoided without Ishua and Arya. Alan wanted them to simply forget about those guys at least for now, since he had already gone through the ordeal to free them. He ordered them to be silent and follow him, that way they would prove they didn't need that loser graduate. Might and Ritteru hesitated anxiously, but still timidly followed Alan into the dungeon, because he was the leader. And so began the story of the fallen hero and the monoporter, who would later be called a hero, began. Meanwhile, Ishua and Arya left Axis village, and the villagers saw them off with sincere, friendly smiles. Arya was glad to see these villagers exactly those they deserved. She saw Sensei as a hero and now asked where they should go next. At first, he wanted to surrender the hero licenses of his party, and only then register as a traveler. So for this purpose, he would return to the town for newcomers, Norbish. Meanwhile, Alan was clearing the path of monsters one by one, striking them repeatedly with powerful moves from his holy sword. One more, he was sure, this dungeon would be just a simple walk even without a monoporter. In this world, the guild ranked dungeons on a scale from E to SS. Even veterans could be destroyed in ordinary dungeons like the one Alan was currently in. Mythia and Ritteru knew this truth, so they stayed alert. They ordered Alan to be careful and save mana for their return path because Ishua was not nearby to cover them. As soon as Alan heard his name mentioned again, he boasted that he did not need him. And they would have been complete cowards if they had fled from this rank of dungeon. He thought, mana shortage does not happen that often. But Mythia tried to explain to him, the thing is, Ishua never let them even feel it. He believed that the perfect mana porter should catch the team and support it without even letting it realize how much mana is consumed. Mythia then dodged the monster's attack and showed that they must not allow monsters to surround them. Ritteru the sage cast spells on Alan's attacks to strengthen them. The enhanced strikes turned out to be so accurate that the monsters were wiped out in one volley. Then Alan asked the others if they also thought that their party was already too strong even without Ishua. So it turns out that his help was not needed at all. However, then Alan suddenly felt something was wrong in this situation. He noticed how a lizard man was growing behind Mythia. Alan warned her and also noticed that she was not using her magic sword despite everything, she was fighting with daggers. Although Mythia is a magic sword warrior, she reasoned this way. Since Ishua is not here, she cannot risk and exhaust her mana, so she must fight carefully. Ritteru also warned that her mana was about to reach its limit. This angered Alan because he could not tolerate even the thought that his party was so weak. He tried to prove his strength with another strike from the holy sword. But suddenly he was pierced by a sharp headache from excessive mono consumption, and he burst out screaming. He was shouting about what was wrong with him, and Mythia replied, it's because his mana was almost depleted. Alan did not want to believe that the cause was a lack of mana, since this had never happened to him before. Alan has more mana reserves than an average person, so he usually does not have to worry much about its shortage when fighting with normal attacks. But now he was used to techniques that consumed too much mana, especially since he received the holy sword. The king had already calculated. Due to excessive consumption by holy swords, the hero would inevitably fall into mana shortage. So at the very beginning he entrusted the hero squad to solve this problem. It turns out Alan had never felt a mana shortage on his own skin before. Then Mythia asked Alan if he could get up, but Alan, realizing his own weakness, was too scared. He was afraid of the lizard monster standing right in front of him. And he knew even if he could overcome this someday, now he was unlikely to endure. The lizard man looks at him only as prey. He understands that Alan is stronger. The survival instinct worked in Alan. He broke free from the fight, leaving Mythia behind. At the same time, Alan ordered Ritteru to follow him and instead cover him. But Ritteru was worried about leaving Mythia alone, and still Alan shouted, better let him escape from here than disappear along with that magical swordswoman. Hero safety must be the top priority. As soon as Ritteru got angry, she immediately made a decision, no more doubts, period. Then she stepped step by step towards Mythia, while Alan was interrogating her about what exactly she was doing. Ritteru refused to abandon Mythia while she was fighting for her life. And Mythia clearly made it understood, Alan had no right to call himself a hero. Ritteru remembered she currently has no mana. The only thing left for her was to enter the fight, strike the lizardman with her stick from the side. Alan was stunned to see the sage resort to physical attacks. While Mythia continued, daggers came into play. She struck and sliced the limbs of the lizard knight in the very cut that Ritteru had made. Mythia was glad that she and Ritter listened to the issue as advice how to fight without mana for the worst scenarios. Then they heard Alan scream, and when Alan cornered another lizardman, Mythia grabbed that monster from behind and strangled it, to save the hero who was supposed to be the one saving others. She made it clear that they would not abandon their companions, unlike Alan. Alan did not give up until the very end to ensure they would get out of here alive. After some time, they finally managed to break out of the dungeon, and Mythia and Ritter were extremely exhausted because they fought without mana and were also dragging Alan. Mythia was glad she never stopped training with the sword and did not rely on mana constantly. Ritter admitted that it was a great help to them, so they breathed a sigh of relief. At least they managed to return outside alive. Alan angrily attacked them. "Ha, what the hell, why are you standing there grinning?" He hated that they couldn't even overcome a weak dungeon path, so they retreated like cowards. He blamed their defeat on the fact that the sage and magical swordsman used their weapons improperly. The sage constantly spun around his own staff and attacked up close, while Mythia used daggers instead of a magical sword. Alan insisted that he was the one who defeated most of the enemies during their expedition. And meanwhile, the other two were just a burden and the reason for their defeat. Mythia couldn't stand it and shouted that Alan was to blame for everything, saying that he was the first to exhaust the mana. Alan waved his hand. "It's just a badly timed headache," and then Mythia yelled at him, forcing him to jump up and try to use his holy sword here and now. He calmed Mythia down with words to Ritter that it was pointless with such a person. And Mythia admitted she was right. The gaze of the heroine Alan full of disappointment and anger. Alan hated being looked down on with those eyes, and now the other two. "I just decided to go and rest in the nearest village." Village? Alan couldn't get out of his head that condescending look someone had just thrown at him. And he simply followed all the way to the nearest village from here. They arrived at Axis Village, the place where Ishua and Arya had been before, and it was there that travelers met them. Alan introduced himself as a hero and told the village lady that they were looking for shelter to rest. They were tired after failing to conquer the dungeon. The lady was surprised when she came across another hero the same day. She couldn't hold back and blurted out. The previous hero she had to meet was a very modest and wonderful person just like Saint Arya. Alan pushed one question out of his head. What kind of failure was here and why was he called a hero? A local lady from the village shouted at Alan, demanding that he not dare to insult the hero of their village, Asuya. But Alan repeated the same thing and even stated that Ishua was just a fraud and a fool whom he had expelled. Mythia and Ritteru were shocked as soon as they learned that Ishua had expelled Alan and that he had not left voluntarily. Alan, realizing he was talking too much, tried to change the subject and asked the villagers to simply give him all the best so that he could finally rest and also bring all their potions for mana restoration. The village lady asked if he had money for all this, and Alan wondered if they would really take money from the hero. Alan insisted that the village itself should be honored. After all, it was the village that made the hero serve, and this instantly ruined his image in their eyes. Neither Mythia nor Ritteru managed to shut him up. He managed to spill a whole stream of nonsense. Mythia tried to explain that this only happens under special circumstances, but Ritteru waved it off. It was all in vain, and the villagers were already set against them. The village lady decided that these were simply disgusting people who finally showed their true face, pretending to be heroes to extort money and take valuables from people. Alan stubbornly insisted that Ishua was fake, but the peasants knew better. Ishua didn't even accept their thanks and was nothing like such fakes as he was. Alan claimed he was real, but the next moment he was knocked down by a blow so sharply that his words were cut off. Even eggs and more, the peasants began throwing everything at them indiscriminately. They could not tolerate anything that went against their savior Ishua, so they drove the fake heroes out of the village. Mythia told Alan that they needed to run away right now, and Alan retreated in anger. After that, Mythia and Raider started questioning Alan about what the hell he meant when he kicked Ishua out of the party. Alan ordered her to be silent, insisting that he had just expelled an incompetent person, someone who did not deserve to be in the hero party. They could not believe that they had just allowed such a thing to happen to a person as good as Ishua. And she decided to go to him immediately to apologize. She made it clear they wouldn't even be able to pass the ranked dungeon without Ishua. But again, Alan, hearing that name, shouted and accused Mythia and Raider of holding him back. He yelled at them that if they also wanted to be kicked out of the party. The party fell silent, just like Ishua, after everyone heard that, and they were quiet. And Alan realized that he probably said something he shouldn't have. Mythia and Ritter threw him the same hateful look, saying that Alan had always been like that and that she didn't care to leave now Ishua wasn't here anyway. Ritter also added, Alan doesn't deserve to be a hero, and if they follow him they will only lose their lives. Alan felt trouble was about to start, and if everyone left now it would turn into a real disaster for him. He tried to keep them in the party, pressing on the fact that these two owed him a favor for still allowing them to be in the party, and also that they could take some mana recovery potions and dive into another dungeon again. But Mythia and Ritter had already decided everything and simply threw their heroes' licenses aside. They did it right under Alan's feet so that the resignation sounded without any doubt. Alan said that throwing a hero license like that was disrespectful, but they didn't care. They no longer wanted to be in this party. Alan shouted that he was a man whose fame had spread all over the world as the hero of this continent, but for these two, it changed nothing. Since they knew what he was like with a nasty character, they just turned around and walked away, leaving Alan alone to now regret his actions. After that, Mythia asked Ritter what they should do next. Ritter replied, since Ishua didn't abandon them as promised, they could unite with him. Ritter decided to use detection skills to find Ishua using a strand of his hair that she had obtained. And surprisingly, Mythia really had one hair of Ishua, just in case she ever had to find him with her own detection skills. They both laughed at this coincidence, and it was clear that each of them had a jealous attachment to Ishua. They activated detection magic and found out that the root of the problem was. His current location is Norbish Town. While they were heading to meet Ishua, Alan felt envy towards Ishua here. And he did not understand why he, the hero, had to suffer because of some monoporter. So he grasped the very idea to recruit Ishua back into the party because he was probably seething with resentment after being kicked out. He was sure that the loser would cry tears of joy as soon as he got the chance to return. He used his party detection ability and could verify the whereabouts of members by their licenses. Alan learned that Ishua's current location was Novich Town, so he decided to go there immediately to bring that trashy monoporter back into the party. For now, Ishua was in the city of Nabish to start his journey together with him and Arya. They did not waste a minute. They immediately headed to the Travelers Guild, and Arya was the first to pass the status check to determine her solo rating. All her stats were at the B rank level, except for intelligence it was top S rank. The receptionist expected such excellent results from the saint. After her turn, Arya told Ishua to check himself next. Then Ishua was nervous. He had never passed a status check before, but now he was doing it to register as a new adventurer. He placed his hand on the crystal that measures a person's status. And as soon as it started, the crystal emitted a very bright magical light. Passers-by and the receptionist were stunned. Such a response came from the teleporter, who was not supposed to be given a high status. The receptionist checked his statistics. All indicators were full. Solid B and A, but the most impressive was his mana capacity, which was at the SSS rank. No one had heard of the SSS rank before, so it was a real sensation. While the receptionist wondered if something had happened to the measuring device. At that moment, Arya added that she had never seen an issue run out of mana. That was enough as evidence the statistics were shown correctly, so everyone believed it. Then the registrars decided that Ishua and Saint Arya's party would start exactly as C-rank adventurers. Others were filled with surprise. There had never been a case before where someone started not from F or E but from other ranks. Ishua did not want to receive any special treatment, but that was the least of his concerns. Everyone who was there wanted to recruit him and Saint Arya to their own party. They promised them the best treatment they could offer. But Ishua was overwhelmed by a sudden downpour of recruitments. Moreover, he noticed, Arya was unable to endure so much interaction. She was shy. He told everyone, disperse, he was only a mono reporter and of little use. Then the girl attacked the travelers. She shouted that they were disturbing Ishua and ordered them to calm down. The travelers were frightened by this girl, so they fell silent. Down while she walked to Ishua and introduced herself as Diana, she said that her job was Sword Saint. Even if she was some kind of famous adventurer, someone still told him, Diana was actually an S-rank adventurer. She belonged to the party of hero Lillian, who recently defeated Ifrit, one of the 4 demons under the direct control of the demon lord. Ishua was surprised to hear about another hero's party, and Diana stepped forward, apologized for the commotion, and said she needed to ask him one question about him, and the question is, would he like to join their party instead? Ishua did not expect that even he, the Sword Saint, would be directly needed by someone to the extent that he would be so openly recruited. But unfortunately, he did not want to join anyone and wanted to work alone for some time together with Arya. Diana said that her leader was worthy of becoming a hero. She was sure Lillian would become a great leader for them, but Arya immediately put the dots over the I. Recently, Ishua suffered because of a hero who never managed to understand his abilities. Diana assured Lillian that she was definitely not that kind of person. But Arya could not entrust leadership to anyone who did not even come to meet those he himself was going to recruit. These words actually silenced Diana. She had no excuses left. Then Ishua apologized to her and firmly said that Arya was just worried about him and did not want to be rude. Moreover, although it was his first time meeting Diana, he felt she could be trusted, and leader Lillian must also be a wonderful person. But even despite this, he was recently kicked out of the party, so he wants to work only with those he knows well. Diana immediately understood what he meant, although she was very disappointed that he did not join her party. She burst into tears. She felt very bad because she could not complete Lillian's task and recruit Ishua. Ishua saw, externally Diana was a bit clumsy, but from her manner of holding herself, he realized something else: she was really talented and possibly a sincerely good person. But it all comes down to bad timing. If it had happened at another moment, he would have gladly agreed to her proposal. Ishua believed, the heroine Lillian is wonderful because she has Diana herself in her company. Diana turned to Lillian and apologized to her for failing the task. She noticed how Lillian is currently honing her magic. Even if she had no work related to magic, she could still feel it. Lillian's magical circles were becoming more complex and better maintained every day. Lillian soon finished training and opened her eyes. She heard about how Diana failed Ishua's recruitment, and decided that he must have his own circumstances. Diana recalls, Lillian was a brilliant girl. She immediately received the position of heroine after birth. And her number grew even more after she defeated one of the 4 heavenly demons. And still she constantly trains seriously, no hint of arrogance. Her duties as a heroine mercilessly took away the time to enjoy youth, and even her emotions have become diluted, dulled. But only if she hears a certain name. She cries, tightly hugging Diana, and asks if Ishua hates him. Diana does not understand who Ishua was to Lillian. However, she told her that Ishua asked the leader to come and meet him personally and suggested next time she would go herself. Lillian was so embarrassed she did not even dare to try. Diana wondered when Ishua became her first love. When Lillian found out that Ishua was again in the same city today, she was overwhelmed with complete collapse. Diana suggested they secretly follow him and wait for the right moment to rescue him when he gets into trouble. Lillian liked this idea, and she decided to do exactly that. Diana was glad that Lillian finally started behaving according to her age. And for a girl her age, falling in love is quite natural. She hoped that getting to know Ishua would be a good start for Lillian. The next morning at the Adventurers Guild, Ishua and Arya came to take their first task as a team together. And the first thing they saw inside was a crowd of adventurers fighting among themselves like rats, competing over who would take which mission. If you didn't want to get stuck in the crowd, then Arya noticed something important was also left on the side of the table. Also announced learn those requests. When the receptionist manager saw him, she greeted him and immediately noticed he was reviewing the quest left on the table. Announced the tasks that resembled conquering the undead, filtering rusty power reactors, and even there was a whole mission just to find a cat. Arya loved cats, so she wanted to take him. Here some problem decided to just take all the tasks that were placed on the table. The secretary asked if he really agreed, and he nodded. He liked these tasks. The receptionist decided that he was really good and, moreover, took on quests that others considered not worthy enough. Others, Ishua could not understand why at the reception they answered that no one would take these quests. Either they paid too little, or they were not worth the effort from Ishua's point of view. These were just as necessary tasks. Someone had to take care of their cat. Then he used cunning to lure cats to himself in the city square, and Arya immediately asked how exactly he did it. It turned out that he simply picked the right wavelengths that cats like, so eventually he found that cat from the quest. While Diana and Lillian secretly watched him from behind, they noticed the amazing skill Ishua had. Even if they are skilled in magic or swordsmanship, it might take them a whole day or a lifetime to find the cat. Meanwhile, Ishua managed it in about 30 minutes. In the next quest, it was undead subjugation, Arya's specialization, and she easily swept away all the undead in a matter of seconds. Ishua scolded her every time she overdid it. While Lillian and Diana sat shocked behind, it was clear those guys can deal with the undead like that immediately. Diana had never seen anyone with such a level of magic, and Lillian was still waiting for her chance to help next time. But even in the next quest filtering power reactors, Ishua managed it alone and didn't drop a single drop of effort. It was so easy that I wondered, is it even right to take money for this? Actually, for this reason, Lillian was already dying of impatience finally to use the chance and help with this right. Then some gangsters appeared angry that someone had taken on the task of selecting reactors for this assignment. They were a competing company to the one who needed help, and because of them, they could not even rely on any maintenance company. A group of guys from the gang set up an ambush on Ishu together, and Lillian decided that it was finally her turn, but Isha just sent the innocent boy to the background. He was pondering which method to choose to deal with these guys, and at the same time, ensure that some nearby energy reactors are not damaged. He reached one conclusion and deployed a wide mana barrier zone around it. The bandits did not feel any danger. Suddenly, their heads began to hurt. Ishua actually imposed a monospheric field. In this zone, he increased the density of mono concentration. Usually, this enhances the mono regeneration power of individual beings in the zone. If they are not used to this, they will immediately be overwhelmed by severe headaches. One of the enemies somehow managed to stay on his feet, and just then, one insider wanted to disable him without causing any injuries. So he simply poured an endless amount of mana into the target until it began to tear from the inside. This would cause the target to lose consciousness even before it could start fighting for a moment. Diana and Lillian did not know that Ishua was also capable of this, but he handled the situation on his own without any problems. The more Diana learns about him, the more impressed she is by his techniques and unique ways to utilize his SSS rank magic power. Lillian also wasted this chance, and it made her angry. She was counting on the next time. Now Diana was sure the situation where Ishu would need their help would not come. A little later, someone else arrived in the town of Nabish. It was none other than Hero Alan, who was going to attach Ishu to his party again to restore everything to its original state. The next day, Ishua, as always, headed to the Adventurers Guild to take on a quest. And even then, others knew him for various reasons. In particular, that guy who helps even with unprofitable quests. The receptionist said that within a few days this issue became too popular. He was sure it was just a misunderstanding, and in reality, he was not doing anything extraordinary. So Alan arrived and called out, Ishua. And Ishua flinched seeing Alan here though not in this place. He asked where Mythia and Ritteru were. To which Alan replied, he had expelled them because they turned out to be incompetent. Ishua could not believe that Alan was capable of such foolishness expelling talented people. But Alan did not care and simply ordered Ishua to return to his heroic team. Ishua and everyone else nearby could clearly see how foolish hero Alan looked. While Alan was pondering what could even be discussed, no one stopped him, they just did as he said. But later, Alan began to hear laughter from passers-by. And he looked at them and asked directly, what's so funny here? One of them replied that he heard this story from Saint Arya about a foolish hero who expelled Ishua. Alan shouts at him, does he really not understand who he is talking to? The man answered sharply, what exactly should he know? He is just trying to order 2 adventurers of C rank. Alan was shocked because he knew beginners were supposed to be sent only to F or E ranks. The others explained to him that Ishua and Arya were already incredible from the start. Even the cow noticed that something was wrong with Alan, without extra explanations as if it was simple magic. Alan hated when random strangers looked down on him condescendingly. Then Ishua made it clear that he would no longer join Alan's party. After he said everything, Ishua simply went to choose the next quest. While Alan was stunned by the fact that Ishua refused his offer. And on top of that, he was also mocked as a weakling. He wanted to show his strength to everyone right there, as soon as he grabbed the hilt of his sword. Then someone shouted at him, stop, what are you doing there? Diana remained out of the matter, and she stayed aside while the rest sorted out their relationships. She made it clear to Alan unequivocally, fighting inside the guild is strictly forbidden. And if he so passionately wanted to show strength, then the rival precisely she was supposed to be on her side. Diana declared that she had the determination to deal with Alan anytime. And from this strange threat on her part, he was momentarily confused. He immediately felt, this woman is dangerous, so he decided to retreat for today and rushed away. Diana was disappointed in this hero. That guy couldn't even grasp the difference in their abilities, until she began to show her hostility so openly. Sorry Diana, thank you for the help, and now Diana understands what problem I meant when I talked about a bad experience with the hero. She hopes that Alan will no longer cause Isu any problems. After that, Ishua spent another week doing ordinary quests. One day he came across a task. The adventurer was asked to go to the elven village and report everything unusual to the guild. Arya was even surprised when she saw the reward, 30 gold coins. Coins which were definitely many times larger than those given by ordinary quests. Ishua stood guard. He could not risk Arya's life because of a strange quest, so he did not intend to take it. When the receptionist saw this, she insisted, let him take that task, just go to the elven village and report that everything is fine. Then Ishua asked her, if so, why do other people not take it? She replied that there is a reason and that she really did not want to say it. But no, this task was issued by the guild, and it was Ishua who received it. Since Ishua always cleared non-viable quests, they decided to reward him specially with a quest that was worth nothing. He threw away the thought that for someone who had worked for only about a week would sound quite cheeky. And his efforts at that time became another reason to entrust him with this task, so she asked him to take it as if it were a sightseeing walk. While Ishua was trying to somehow ease the tension, Arya suddenly wanted to look over everything together with him completely, not in fragments. And immediately they exclaimed that they would take this task. Could she not have been a resilient Aryan? Probably just tired of quests coming one after another, so he has to take her somewhere to rest, on a real vacation. He accepted the task, and because of this both the receptionist and Arya shone with happiness. Lillian, who overheard them from the side, also wanted to go to Elf Village after all. Ishua was just heading there. She was looking for a chance to earn his trust. Diana was a little surprised at how skillfully Lillian could hide even though she was a hero. She tried to explain to her. Ishua would not need their help, but Lillian had already approached the reception and asked for quests near the Elf Village. The receptionist looked around and found the necessary one, and found the task to subdue the king of mutated ogres. However, it was a rank quest, currently the most difficult of all they had encountered so far. Lillian thought that even in a rank quest it would go smoothly, and the registrar thought the same. So they decided to set off immediately to Elf Village, to complete the task as quickly as possible and seize the chance to win the issue of trust. 3 days passed, and Ishua and Arya simply arrived near the elven settlement by carriage. And they could not believe that the world tree, Yggdrasil, was so huge. It was visible even from several kilometers away. Ishuaga recalled, the world tree is legendary, having protected the elven settlement for over 2,000 years and purified the miasma. St. Arya added that the origins of the world tree are seeds. An angel sowed it on lands belonging to monsters. From there it grew into a large tree, and people could live around it, peacefully without fear of monsters. According to legends, it is also the world tree that protected the world from monsters, and the publisher withdrew the story that Arya loved very much. Yet Ishua strangely felt something was wrong. He could sense that something was wrong with the flow of the world tree. He hoped it was just a product of his imagination. While Lillian and Diana were fighting monsters, they were distracted by all this January and they lost sight of Ishua. Diana said, "Nothing can be done, they are now standing right at the foot of the world tree. If there are so many monsters here, they cannot let them pass and cause trouble on the main road." Diana was also bothered by the dense flesh of Mia hanging around them, and it pressed on her lungs. Lillian cast a strong healing spell on her, for which she thanked him, but they knew it was only temporary relief. They had to deal with all these monsters and overcome this mirage here. Suddenly, another monster attacked them stronger than the previous one, a mutated king ogre who. What was the goal of the conquest, for which Diana was glad she managed to obtain and what they did not have to waste time searching for. When she rushed forward to slash the ogre with her sword, she made a strong swing intending to finish him off. Her confidence shattered as soon as the sword left no cut on the king ogre, and she didn't even need to dodge. Diana was in shock and could not understand why her attacks were not working. Lillian said that the monster seemed to have evolved. It absorbs all the mana around it. She was promoted to S rank instead of A. In that case, Diana made Lillian help her to distract that monster for a moment. Lillian activated her special skill given to her by the hero job. Although this skill consumed a lot of magical power, with that mastery, she could transfer both her allies and enemies into a virtual world created by herself. This is called Inherent Barrier Fantasy World, and it is here that they could fight, holding a tangible advantage on their side. It was a skill worthy of a chest fit for a hero, because everything Lillian imagined was happening here without deviations. And now Lillian had enhanced Diana's sword so that it became the strongest sword she could imagine. It was the strongest weapon they had left to fight the enemies, and Diana swung the sword with all her might in a top-down attack. He believed that this would definitely put an end to that monster. Lillian was also confident, but their joy did not last long when they saw that the Ogre King survived the blow. His sturdy body deflected the attack and took no damage. Both of them understood this time it was over. Now they could not deny they had never seen a monster that could repel an attack of such power. Even one of the 4 heavenly demons was hurt by it. This meant that this mutated monster's magical resistance was many times higher. Lillian told Diana that the mana was already at the limit, so she would have to remain motionless to hold this fantastic world. But Diana again and again tried to destroy what stood in it. She struck the Ogre King several times, and each time the sword was deflected, bounced back. Eventually, this exhausted her to the edge. So the Ogre King rushed at her while she was completely defenseless. And his club strike, with the club hit her torso and caused severe injuries. He made her cough up blood and threw her away. Lillian was left without any protection. The monster was relentlessly approaching. She did not want to die somewhere like that. She wanted to become a great hero and defeat the Demon Lord. But when everything turned out exactly like that, it no longer occurred to her that she would survive. She was tormented by the thought, in this life she could not do anything for Ishua. So it happened, and then she heard Ishua's voice. He ordered Arya not to leave until he himself tried to enter this invisible field. Lillian did not expect at all that someone could enter her space without any obstacles, because without her permission it would have been impossible. Yet he managed to grab it by the ends and enter inside as if it were an ordinary place. Throughout her life, Lillian received too much attention from different people, mostly because she was a heroine and they believed, with such a little girl it would be easy to deceive, and to gain advantage from the fact that you are on the hero's team. Lillian always kept her ears alert and often stayed alone. During a walk she stumbled, fell, and the plush bear rolled from her hands onto the ground. She picked it up and immediately realized the bear was stained with dirt. Lillian trembled and began to cry. She suddenly felt helpless. It was then that she first heard Ishu's voice. He called her and asked if she was all right. She could never forget that day and still holds in memory the moment when she was on the brink of death. Lillian would have regretted it if she had died without managing to do something for the one she values so much. And fortunately, that person appeared just in time when she needed help. While she was lost in thought, an alarm signal sounded, and she instantly helped him get out of the way during the monster attack. He asked if she was feeling okay, and Lillian thanked him without unnecessary words for saving her life, but it was still clear. She was nervous because she was standing too close. Ishua remembers how he once came across her in the castle. But most importantly, they found Diana in a critical condition. He sharply looked around, trying to find out what exactly had happened here. All this happened just a few hours ago. In reality, Ishua was just walking around outside, near the elven village. They fight monsters so as not to sit idly, but due to circumstances, they still cannot get inside. Arya was disappointed. They were sure the village was open, and even the guide assured them that it was so. She poured out her anger directly on the monsters. Every minute they complain, why are they never given an entry to the elven village? while she was pulling monsters out from behind the trees throughout the entire forest. Issue a warning, nearby they encounter too many ranked monsters, as if they found themselves inside a demon kingdom. Since it was too easy for Saint Arya, she did not notice that they were already fighting ranked monsters until this moment. There was hope that she would finally pay more attention to what was happening around. At first, everything was like that, and then they noticed. The miasma around this place was becoming thicker and thicker. Ishua decided to use his monolink field to create a barrier around them. It also purified the air from the miasma around them, so they decided to bypass and patrol the area around the village. It was necessary to check if any possible danger was lurking somewhere, just in case for the people who live here. At some point, I noticed an anomaly in one specific place. Realizing that a whole bunch of strange things were probably happening here as if for entertainment, as if for a quest. He went to the place where he had been catching that strange feeling for some time. Eventually, they reached the place where Lillian was fighting inside the barrier of her fantasy world. Arya noticed it too as soon as they got that close, and she had no doubts left. This was probably not without miasma. Ishua figured everything out and immediately realized. The configuration was an incredibly complex magical structure. As soon as he analyzed it, he had a chance to create a passage into that space. He asked Arya to stay close as soon as they entered the space. Lillian was stunned. Ishua dismantled part of her fantasy world so easily as if it was nothing special, and she herself could not manage it despite many years. Then Ishua asked her if she was the one who created this place. She nodded and Ishua finally understood. The girl he had seen earlier was actually the heroine Lillian. Ajit disrupted their meeting with an attack, and acting quickly, briefly explained the situation to everyone that this was. This monster mutated by devouring flesh and then evolved to a higher rank. At that very moment he fully charged Lillian's magical power. After that he gave Arya clear instructions to heal Diana. Arya unleashed her healing magic and quickly closed all the wounds Diana had suffered. And as soon as Diana opened her eyes, she was immediately overwhelmed with anxiety for Lillian. When Diana saw Arya and Ishua, she was consumed by a single question: why are they here? And Arya also explained the problem: she could not cleanse the meat poison that Diana had inhaled. Then he managed on his own and cleansed her body of all evil with the help of pure mana. Diana was impressed. She felt completely well. And the very fact that such a method exists was a great revelation for her. He is praised, he just learned a few things so as not to appear as a low-grade monoporter. Now Lillian attacked the giant with a magical fireball. But it caused no harm. She poured dozens again and again just to exhaust the monster. He pressed into the ground and knew how hard it is to cast several magical spells at once like that. Still, Lillian was disappointed. She had inflicted almost no damage on that mutated monster. So she decided to take a step forward as a heroine and told Ishua that this was a wonderful meeting. She was glad to see him one last time. She decided to stay to hold this monster here while Ishua and the others escaped from here. She swore on the pride of a hero. Both the hero and Ishua watched in admiration at how bravely she held on. She truly deserved to be called a hero. Unlike Alan, who would never sacrifice himself for others, she didn't even have time to think, not for a moment. But Ishua had no intention of leaving her alone, and he told her that she could not defeat that monster by herself. She didn't understand why he wasn't leaving. Then Ishua asked Arya to do as usual. After that, Arya cast several buffs and restorative spells on each of them. While Ishua bore all the mana costs, everyone could activate their abilities without any restrictions. Arya focused on support spells, and thanks to the power of the Holy, and also because of Ishua, her capabilities became almost limitless. Now they looked nearly invulnerable. Both Diana and Lillian could keep fighting tirelessly. I told them, go for it. And Diana was the first to jump forward, and managed to leave a small cut on the Ogre King's belly. Lillian noticed. Their attacks were finally causing significant damage to this creature. And suddenly, out of nowhere, Arya released her Holy Nova beam straight at the Ogre King. Diana had seen this more than once, but up close she literally felt the beam has incredible firepower. However, even that strike left only a small scratch on the giant, so the fight would drag on for a long time. As time passed, Ishua already had a plan on how to deal with this monster. And he began to pour holy mana directly into the body of that monster. Lillian immediately understood what Ishua was doing. It was explained like this: he simply pours burning holy mana from miasma into the Magar, and that monster swallows it. Instead, the evolution will go backward, and the monster will weaken over time. His theory proved correct. The Ogre King slowly weakened and rolled back to rank 1. Now everything could be done quickly, and Diana asked Lillian to help her. She created a sword, the strongest one she could imagine. Ishua was stunned by what this blade was capable of. When Diana swung the sword with all her might, she defeated the Ogre King. After that, Ishua and Diana shook hands while she thanked him. He thanked him and officially introduced Ishua, her leader. Diana ordered Lillian to greet him properly immediately. She nervously spelled out her name with trembling hands. Remember that they had already met once in the castle. Lillian kept thinking embarrassedly that he still remembered her. It turned out that Lillian might be more timid than Arya. Diana said it was strange to see so much meat around this place near the World Tree. They decided to head to the Elven village to learn more about the situation. But just then, they saw a part of the World Tree shatter and Arya was not among the debris. Such debris looks like signs of disaster. Lillian made them get to the Elven village as quickly as possible and check what was happening there. Ishua liked how reliable she was as befits a heroine. When they reached the Elven village, the guards noticed Ishuga and Arya and, "You still remember that they came here before and also." Then Lillian introduced herself as Hero and said she came here to investigate the area around Elf Village. The guard questioned her whether she was genuine, because someone had already called himself a hero, entered the village, and since then everything started to get stranger. He was worried. What if she was also one of the fake heroes? And there was no time to think. They rushed past them. The guards did not stop them because near the World Tree the situation was already getting out of control. Ishua was a little upset. His first visit to the Elven settlement had to be arranged in a hurry, especially if it was supposed to be for inspection. They reached the middle of the village and from there a familiar voice sounded. What belonged to Alan, and he was shouting that it was not his fault. A few days ago, Alan had to visit the castle to report to the king about his achievements. But he had no answer. His head was still boiling and mixed up, unable to find the right words. So Alan had to immediately set off back from Nabish to the castle, as soon as the king suddenly summoned him. The prime minister was already waiting for good news from the hero he recognized, and the nobles were proud of the chosen heroes. Since hero Lillian managed to defeat one of the 4 heavenly demons, the prime minister eagerly wanted to hear about Alan's achievements, hoping that finally there would be good news. Alan replied that in the last few days he had just leveled up a few times. The minister immediately clarified if that was all. Alan swallowed his words uncertainly and admitted, "Right now he is in the process of conquering a ranked dungeon, and soon will move on to exploring S-ranked dungeons." And the king shouted that he did not want to hear the same reports from dungeon explorations. He wanted to hear a real report from Ishua right now. Alan was furious. Why is the name Alan being twisted again? And in any case, if the king finds out that he was left alone in the party, it will end badly for him. He lied that Ishua was feeling unwell, and this scared the king so much that out of concern he asked, "How is he now, better or still bad?" Then Alan deliberately said that Arya was with Ishua, and he himself was just resting and hanging around, postponing matters. Alan wanted to slip out of this situation by cunning, and at any cost make at least a step to bring a good report to the king next time. The king still held his patience and decided that this was quite normal. Then he said to Alan, he had an urgent task for him and also ordered Alan to first discuss it with Ishua before moving further. After Alan heard about this task, he set off on the road to the Elven village and eventually reached Yggdrasil. The quest given to him boiled down to one thing: to investigate the surroundings of the Elven village, where mutated monsters have been appearing more and more often lately. He asked the coachman if strange, abnormal monsters had really been appearing in this place in recent days. The man replied that there were indeed many such reports, and that was exactly why this area was now closed. Alan heard that hero Lillian had already gone hunting mutated monsters there, but he did not believe she would be a great help. The coachman said he supposedly heard. The heroine Lillian is a very strong and beautiful woman, but all Alan thought about was a little freak with a gorilla-like swordswoman who stays close to her. With her, Alan was going to solve everything here on his own and take the credits for himself. And since he did not encounter a single monster, he decided, rumors are just rumors. All he believed that today everything was playing into his hands. If Ishua had been at this banquet, he would have collected free fame without even moving. When Alan reached Elf Village, he rejoiced. No monsters appeared on the way. The guard informed him that now no one can enter the village without permission. Then Alan asked the guard if Lillian had come here. The elf guard asked in response who he was. To this, Alan replied with his heroic license, saying that he is a hero and is investigating the Elven settlement by order of the king. The Elven guard had never heard of a hero acting alone, so Alan confirmed, everything is exactly as it seems, and asked to be let into the village. So Queen Alevs arrives there and orders the guard to let him in. Her name was Chelsea, and her beauty enchanted Alan there. Kelsey thought they no longer had reasons to keep their problems in the shadows, and there was no way out, so they would have to accept external help. She asked Alan to follow her and immediately warned, if everything goes wrong here, it could easily spread throughout the world. Therefore, she ordered him to be extremely careful. Ellen could not understand why she was making such a big deal out of this. Is the problem really that serious, or did they just stubbornly not want to properly address it and solve it? And when he thought that the king wanted a good report from him, Ellen was ready for anything, just not to go under and first assess the situation. If it turned out that he could not handle it, he would simply run away. In the Elven village, he encountered strange looks from the local inhabitants, as if they were all already afraid of something and trembling with fear. Even Alan could understand things ahead were clearly bad. So he asked the Queen of the Elves if Lillian had been here before. The Queen of the Elves replied that Alan was the only one who had recently arrived here. This made Alan think, if she is not here, then is it worth meeting her first? But then he became greedy and decided that this was his chance to handle everything himself and prove to the king that he did not need anyone. Soon he reached the World Tree. From the outside, it looked incredibly huge. It took your breath away if you looked closely. Alan looked around and found this strange place. It seemed that the roots of the World Tree were slowly rotting. The elves tried to keep everything as safe as possible, but nothing worked. Chelsea confirmed the World Tree was actually losing its life force. Masma seemed to be increasingly gaining the upper hand over it. Alan decided, then the monsters will definitely become much more brutal. It turned out that the entire territory would soon become uninhabitable. Alan immediately realized this was no longer under his control. And when the Elven Queen asked if he could handle it, Alan involuntarily thought to come up with a good excuse and quickly leave. He insisted that he had just come to investigate. But then he remembered the angry faces of the Prime Minister and the King. This made him not hesitate. Chelsea asked him what had happened. Then Alan told her to just leave this situation to him. He moved and said it right now, taking full responsibility for healing the World Tree, and even swore by his pride like a hero. Now he had no choice but to do it. Alan thought he could try to apply some healing magic to it. After that, he descended to the World Tree. The Elven Queen considered the hero reliable, and even the elves from the World Tree Guardian team could do nothing about it. Alan did not suspect that the entire separate team of Alivs was responsible for guarding and healing the World Tree. And he decided, if so, then let it fall on him with his heroic skills and healing abilities. He cast resurrection magic on the World Tree, a spell he considered very high-level restorative, capable of healing even life-threatening wounds. And he still hadn't told others that he could use it ever since he left Arya with healing instructions. Now, but nothing happened. It happened and the elves immediately said the spell was a joke. In this situation, it couldn't work. Alan assured that he was only preparing. After that, he tried everything, healing spells and antidotes up to his knees. But nothing worked, so the elves concluded the expectations from the hero were too loud and did not justify themselves. And they added that if it worked as promised, they would have dealt with it much earlier. Alan became increasingly irritated and fell into despair. Again, it seemed he wouldn't manage to report the results to the king, and he would no longer be called a hero. But suddenly he noticed, in a certain root of the World Tree, it seemed someone had carved a spot. The root had become faded and strange, as if a nightmare fog had gathered there. Alan drew his blade, and declaring that he had finally solved the root of the problem, rushed to act. He decided the time had come to show what kind of hero he really was. But Queen Chelsea was worried and asked what he was going to do. Alan told her to be quiet and just watch. When he approached the swollen root, he drew the holy sword and cut off the part that had grown there. There, Queen Chelsea screamed in alarm, and Alan was proud of what he had done. When did Chelsea shouted at Alan, as if he had lost his mind or something, that he decided to attack the World Tree. Alan stated that he simply cut out the source of the miasma because it was clear. The miasma was accumulating right there. Suddenly, miasma began to spread rapidly throughout the entire World Tree. And Alan was frightened. Why was this happening so quickly right there? Yes, the Elf Queen lost all hope. The World Tree was dying right before their eyes, rapidly and relentlessly. She explained, the roots are the defensive instinct of the World Tree, and the swollen path that Alan cut is the last line of defense against the miasma. Alan realized that he had gone very wrong, and now he had done an act that would not be forgiven. The elves were all furious at Alan and accused him of working with the Lord of Demons. Alan wanted to speak, but he had no idea and he did not do it intentionally, so he was not to blame for it. Therefore, Alan heard a voice calling him, and he could never forget that voice, as at that moment he was shouting at Ishua, "Damn it, why is he here? Ask him again, what did he do with the World Tree?" The elves informed him that the hero Alan cut off the root that sealed the miasma. Make a sharp jump down quickly, check the situation up close. The Elven Queen asked Lillian who they were. Lillian replied that she was the heroine Lillian, and that she already knew the Elf Queen Chelsea. Chelsea stated that at least once she was the Elf Queen until the World Tree began to die. After this disgraceful event, she no longer deserved to be queen. But then Lillian assured her there is no need to think like that, because it is still too early to despair. There the problem, there he went and closely examined the World Tree. Until he felt the soul of the World Tree there, he told everyone that the World Tree was still alive and that he would try to heal it. The Queen of the Elves rejoiced at these words, but the other elves did not want to trust a human again after what had happened before. Lillian calmed them down, explaining, the man nearby Ishua was still an inexperienced traveler, and right now he was just an ordinary monoporter. And how could the heroine herself guarantee this? To guarantee that in time he would become the man who could save the world. The Queen of the Elves acknowledged her words as truthful, and she looked into Ishua's eyes. They shone with confidence. Casey Selena told the others to allow Ishua to do this, and she wanted to trust him. Because in any case, the World Tree would die if everything remained as it was. On the other hand, she ordered the arrest of Alan, who tried to kill the World Tree. Alan shouted that he was the leader of Ishua, but no one believed him and he was taken into custody. Meanwhile, Ishua was preparing to heal the World Tree, fully understanding the responsibility it placed on him. Yes, he began to pump holy mana into the World Tree, neutralizing the miasma within it with zero effect, thanks to the holy attribute. He still needed to restore the severed roots, so he cast the monolithic spell right into the air. The elves inquired what this distorted magical circle that had appeared now was. The next second the magical circle began to suck out miasma. Ishua declared that he had created a monocorpus that would work as a miasma extraction from the World Tree. He cast more and more mana holes all around the World Tree. Then asked Lillian to place more such circles in places with strong miasma in the body of the World Tree. He asked her to do this because he could not reach high places himself, and she could rise into the air using magic. Lillian did as she was told. As soon as she received mana from Ishua, it was possible to impose several complex magical circles at unseen feel no fatigue at all. Their method worked slowly, and the World Tree really was getting better. Chelsea did not know that such a method existed, so she questioned Ishua about what it was and what it gave on Earth. Ishua replied that he was just a monosuit wearer. Then he asked Lillian to continue and pierce even more mana holes, and at that very moment the elf guardian burst in shouting, "Things outside are really bad." Because their village was suddenly flooded with hundreds of monsters that swarmed from everywhere. The Elven Queen became worried about the rumors of the crowding just when the World Tree had not yet recovered. Lillian instantly understood. Since the World Tree cannot cleanse the miasma in this situation, the monsters have become significantly more active. Ishu cannot leave this place because he had to stay here to heal the World Tree. The same applies to Lillian. Diana literally lit up with joy. Now she would definitely be useful to someone because she had already started to worry that in such a situation she would be of no use. Ishua asked Diana and Arya to take on what was happening outside and hold back the monsters while he and Lillian healed the World Tree. When Diana and Arya reached the village gates, she addressed everyone, even the elven guards, and firmly said that no monster was allowed to pass further. She gathered her courage. This would be her first time in a duet with Saint Arya, and she already felt the situation would be too difficult even for them. Monsters came out of the forest one after another, and Diana asked the archers to take the flanks, while she and Arya would clear the large swarm ahead of them on the main road. Arya cast a holy new magic which killed a couple of monsters immediately. Diana thought that Arya was capable of turning the fight with just her firepower. She was that impressive. While the elves from the village were pulling potions to restore mana so that holy Arya could keep going for a long time, everything around was trembling with tension. Then she applied buffs to Diana and immediately rushed at the monsters, fulfilling her role without any pauses. Well, it turned out that Diana's raw power was much more effective specifically for clearing crowds of monsters. Both Diana and Arya formed a fairly coordinated team when they held the monsters at bay so harmoniously. The heroes' team impressed the elven guards. They admit that these are truly strong fighters. But no one knows for sure how much strength they have left, as they are holding back hordes of monsters by the hundreds. Meanwhile, Ishua and Lillian were taking turns charging the monocorpus, and they had just a little left, a few charges, to complete the healing of the Tree of the World. Diana almost broke down. One of the small monsters that slipped through her blind spot managed to sting her. Arya applied healing and the wound disappeared in an instant. After this, they again rushed relentlessly into battle with the monsters, no matter how exhausting it was. Later, they ran out of mono potions. The further around, the thicker the muscle mass became. And when they saw that the elves were doing everything possible to protect the borders, Diana could not allow herself to complain or fool around even a little. And they felt the battle was not over until the World Tree was restored. Meanwhile, one of the guards reported to the queen that the monsters had very little time left before they broke through the village, and Diana had already begun evacuating the residents. Given the current situation, the monsters would reach here before the World Tree could heal. She ordered that everyone who could fight immediately head to the gates, and she herself would join the fight with a bow if necessary. Ishua concluded that my asthmatic condition had finally receded, and mana was again beginning to fill the World Tree. Now all he had to do was hold on a little longer, just a little further. For now Diana was exhausted, and the monster pierced through her left leg. Arya instantly prepared to cast healing, but her mana was already running low. Diana sensed this and ordered Arya to retreat, even if it meant she would remain here alone at the front, fighting against hundreds of monsters. She looked left and right, and it immediately became clear. Everything was going completely against them. She thought this day was the worst of her entire life. Even a holy swordsman would have to prepare for death twice in one cursed day. She decided if she survived this, she would train even harder than before, so as never to find herself in such a trap again. Then she noticed two people who had jumped down straight from the sky. The sky and the landing right in the middle of a horde of monsters. She recognized them. Magic Sword Swim and Mythia and Sage Ritteru with her powerful magical attacks. They arrived at the best moment, so Diana wondered where they had come from. Arya was glad to see her former party members here. They came to help and change the course of events in their favor. A few weeks ago, just after they left Alan's party, they set off on their way towards Ishua, leaving him behind. They were happy to meet Ishua, but suddenly came across people shouting for help. Their ambushes were covered by some monsters and they did not lose a second, rushing to the rescue. Mythia and Ritteru decided to help these guys, even if it meant being late for the meeting with Ishua. Because if it were Ishua, he would definitely come to the aid of those who need it. And they also wanted to unleash all their anger and dive into this battle with such fury that the air trembles. But as soon as they helped those people, Ritteru and Mythia unexpectedly found themselves at the tail of those guys, although they were heading in the completely opposite direction from the road leading to Nabish town. They could not just leave the people here defenseless. When their escorts had already disappeared, the monsters wiped them out completely. Mythia planned to safely transport the people and headed to Nabish town. But everything went not as planned. Ritteru and Mythia ended up in the luxurious estate of some nobleman. They were offered a feast by the noble. He wanted to express his gratitude to them for saving his daughter's life. The medicine that was carried in the cart saved her, so it was they who gave them a chance for salvation. Ritter squeezed Mythia. It was already time for them to go, and the nobleman asked them to stay for the night. He would regret if he just let them go without properly thanking them. Mythia and Ritter insisted on leaving. They humbly declined the offer and thanked him. But the noble boy began to beg them, "Let me repay you. Otherwise, I won't be able to look my ancestors in the eyes if those who saved my daughter leave empty-handed." Mythia and Ritter did not want to offend him so they decided to stay for the night, but Ritteru did not understand how they could get stuck there for a whole week. Every evening, the nobleman begged them to stay one more night. Mythia already wanted to break free from this place to head to Nabish as soon as possible. Ritter had been troubled for some time by the thought. He checked that Ishua had stopped in Nabish, so they could no longer relax their vigilance. In the morning, they were the first to hurry away from there and set off to finally meet Ishua. But as soon as they reached Nabish town, Ishua was already gone and it became clear that they might be late. The receptionist told them that Ishua had recently gone to the Elven village to carry out a special task assigned by the guild. Mythia wanted to immediately rush after him, but the receptionist stopped them, forcing them to listen to an explanation. Then she added that the king had recently forbidden everyone from entering the area around the village. Ritteru decided if this was the king's order they had no choice but to obey, but Mythia did not want to wait. She found out Ishua had completed all the remaining quests up to this point, so she decided to take care of it. Because he was gone, there was no one to help those in need and preserve his legacy. They took quests to subjugate the undead. The search for the pet dragged through quests, even those that required carrying or caring for it. Eventually, they were called the new hunters of leftover quests, and Mythia just wanted Ishua to praise him when he returned. But then Ritteru did not understand at what exact moment everything ended. He was swept away and carried off by a large bird. She woke up and Mythia was sleeping, simply dying of boredom. And she even asked Ritteru what the hell happened to them. Ritteru replied that they had slept too much, and reminded her that that bird had attacked them. Now it seemed as if the bird was going to lead them to its nest and feed its chicks. Mythia did not want everything to end with her eating baby bird food, and she was going to run away as soon as they touched the ground. Ritter was thinking probably this bird was flying straight towards Elf Village, specifically to where Ishua was standing now. Ritter justified the king's order, saying he wouldn't have worked on them if they were carried by the bird, and it was beyond their control. So they just pretended as if they were helplessly carried by this bird. Mythia decided, a bird of that size definitely has a nest somewhere nearby near the World Tree. But as soon as they got very close to the village, Ritter showed that the state of the World Tree looks bad. That's exactly how they got to Elf Village. He saw Diana and Arya, the two of them were fighting a horde of monsters alone, without outside help. Mythia could easily deal with monsters as if it cost nothing. So she stopped and slowed their acceleration. The monsters attacked in a solid crowd, but they only had enough strength to disrupt the pace. While Ritter was pressing with both physical and magical attacks, she was clearing her side, piled with monsters. Arya noticed these two had learned to fight much better and at the same time sparingly conserved mana. And Diana, on the contrary, could not shake off the thought, why was Hero Alan such a fool driving away skilled people like them? Ritter then gave Arya a vial of mana potion. And Diana also managed to rest thanks to them. For her, so she could re-engage in the fight and be useful, not a burden. Diana's incredible swordsmanship skills amazed Mythia. And at the same time, Lillian also arrived there. She announced her entrance and staged a truly heroic scene, unleashing hundreds of fireballs on the monster. They were glad to have received even more help, and Mythia saw Hero Lillian live for the first time. She had heard of her as a heroine who defeated one of the four heavenly demons. Lillian told everyone that they had already finished setting up the mana holes, and Ishua was taking care of everything else to neutralize the miasma. Their group seemed stronger than before. Back then there were only two of them, Arya and Diana, and now there were five. Each of them firmly believed that Ishua would definitely handle everything on his side without any pause. Lillian recalled the moment when she finally finished configuring the mana holes. It was only necessary and she took over control of all the mana holes. Then slowly the elves noticed. The world tree seemed to have started shedding smaller leaves. Ishua rejoiced. They had managed to stop the erosion of the miasma. After that he asked Lillian to approach the others and help them. Now he only has to pour the holy relic of mana into the world tree and restore the lost circulatory functions. Elves cannot believe that a human is capable of holding so many magical circles at once, and even pouring his own mana into the world tree. Even the queen of the elves does not have such a large capacity for magic, and Ishu maintained the entire circulation there on his own. She herself had to remember the name Ishu because he was doing the impossible. Ishu focused on the circulation of mana inside the world tree. Gradually, the world tree began to heal. The leaves completely stopped falling, and the new leaves also rapidly grew back on the branches. This means that the regenerative powers of the world tree have been restored because it has fully come back to life again. Chelsea burst into tears uncontrollably as soon as she saw the world tree is breathing evenly again. On the outskirts of the village, Diana and others were fighting monsters relentlessly. They immediately felt it when the miasma thinned, and the world tree started working properly again, so the cleansing was effective once more. And they probably had to fight for a few more minutes. Then they noticed the monsters stopped and no longer advanced, as if someone had ordered them to do exactly that. Medea could not believe that everything was so strange. The monsters simply turned around and began to reproduce from the same place, and it was unexpected. It seemed they were leaving as if their mission had failed. Ritter said that the monsters probably became weaker after the cleansing function of the world tree started working again. And that meant one thing: they managed to save the village. Everyone burst with joy from the victory in this battle. They had no idea they could achieve it. And each time they admired Ishua more strongly. It was he who made it possible. Meanwhile, the elven queen could not find words to express her gratitude to him. Ishua replied, there was still one thing left, the last one. After that, he poured an unreal amount of mana into the magic circle, and then spread it throughout the entire world tree, so that everything would never again be dragged into a critical abyss. The queen leaned towards him and asked what exactly he was doing. He answered, and applying light magic to the storeroom, activated a cleansing so that it would never cease. Chelsea did not expect him to go so far for their sake, and at that very moment, others also broke back through the gates and called Ashua. Arya immediately threw herself into their arms and said that everything was already done. They had managed. He thanked everyone, especially Lillian and Diana, for their help. Then he was surprised to realize that Mythia and Ritteru were also here, next to him. Mythia even hugged him, reminding him a lot of time had passed since the day they last saw each other. Ashua had no idea that two of them would also come to help. Mythia replied that it was obvious because they always come to Ashua's aid, but when Ritteru spilled it, it turned out some bird had accidentally brought them here. Chelsea exposed Ashua and declared that he really is the savior who descended upon the elven village. And it's not only him, but also thanks to others, those who saved both the village and the world tree, and they also added that it was simply a wonderful company. Ishua said that it was not really a party. They just happened to be here at the same time, and Chelsea thought it was a party after all. Everyone showed incredible coordination, as if they had been working together for years. She agreed to anything and then solemnly declared they would hold a festival to properly thank their rescuers. The party was held that very night and everyone was having a blast. Someone was dancing without stopping for a moment. Meanwhile, some were savoring the culinary specialties of the elven settlement, heating up happiness to the fullest. Kenzel, Chelsea said that even if Alan had not dealt that devastating blow to the world tree, he was still destined to die like that, so she did not think they would be lucky to get through all of this. Ishua could only imagine the burden Chelsea carried as queen, and she promised to help him if there was at least something she could do for him, and bowing her head showed her respect. Ishua told her to raise her head, and added that the way she holds this festival for them was already enough. Chelsea walked through without any problems and was truly selfless. It was then that he heard a familiar voice, and it frightened him. It belonged to the drunk Arya. Isha did not even notice when she managed to drink. And now she completely drew the attention of everyone to herself, so devastated, as if not a saint. He tried to persuade her not to drink as well, but she only pulled out evidence. They say a saint can cleanse drunkenness if he wishes. Then he asked, why does she not sober up? Arya ignored his question and asked Ishua-senpai to drink together with her. She got too close while persuading him to join. Ishua tried to order her to get off him, but then noticed someone else was shouting. It turned out to be hero Lillian. She was sobbing because her feelings did not reach Ishua. Diana sharply shouted who should go and bring drinks to Lillian, and from that she completely lost self-control. Now it seemed to her as if she were a weak heroine, hated by people. Diana tried to calm her, but Lillian still kept swirling, tightly holding the drink in her hands. Then Diana noticed that Iswa was looking their way. In one of the episodes, she confessed to familiar feelings, how hard it is to watch your own drunk friends. Once everyone rejoiced at the holiday. From serious characters, they broke loose for a moment and gave themselves freedom until they fell asleep. The next day, Ishua prepared to say goodbye and move on. They took Alan with them, even though he was in a cage for all the crimes he committed here. Alan demanded to be released, but the elves did not yield. They would report to the king. The mafia wants it to be possible to simply drop this cage and somehow break Alan's leg to take him back. Ishu calmly told Alan that they must report everything that happened to the king, so he should behave more quietly. First, they will head to the city of Nabish, and only then to the royal capital. The elf queen sincerely thanked him for everything and hoped that they would return very soon in the future. He expressed gratitude to the elf queen for the festival. He also wanted to return there soon, but for now he headed back together with them to Nabish Town. Having just arrived in Nabish Town, Ishua immediately went to the Adventurers Guild. And the receptionist was glad that he was alive and well and gathered again with the rest. She was. She had been worried since everything went awry in Elf Village, but Ishua assured her, now they are safe. And he would also like to report on the quest now. He told her everything that happened while he was there, and she froze on the spot upon hearing that the world tree was almost dead, and because of this, they had to not only fight an S-rank monster, but also manage to revive the world tree. A new problem at the reception turned out to be incredible. But all this was too strange, and she already began to guess who he really was. Say that he is an ordinary monoporter, and everyone standing behind him shook their heads, showing definitely not. The secretary said she just wanted to express gratitude for this quest, but now probably it would be impossible without raising the reward. Considering how much they had to suffer, Iswa did not think he had done anything special, so he agreed only to 30 gold coins exactly as promised. That was already too much. The registrar could not believe that such a modest person existed, but Arya was worried. This modest person was actually sure that he had done nothing significant. The receptionist marked that the quest was completed and similarly noted, the Lillian quest was completed. She immediately became cheerful as soon as she heard that the ascending heroine Lillian had joined with SSS, ranked monoporter Iswa, and really wanted to see it at least once. So they heard someone shouting outside, and the reception did not want to bother dealing with the hero Alan. Alan, not that he could even be called that at all. Alan called those four over there, so they were people from his party, so their achievements were his too. He was reminded that he was the one who kicked them out, and the adventurers were furious. They asked Alan if he wanted to start a war with the elves or something like that. They thought that Alan should wait outside the city so that he wouldn't have to utter so many insults, but Midia wanted this guy to feel even more miserable. Especially after he almost left her to die in a cluttered dungeon, it seems she harbors a grudge against Alan. Alan, the message reports, it is already time to set off to the royal capital and deliver everything to the king. When they arrived at the royal castle, the king felt relief and rejoiced that they returned alive and unharmed. He said he had already heard everything about it from the emissary of the 11th queen. He doesn't understand why Alan went ahead alone and only messed everything up. Alan found no answer to this, so Arya responded. Alan expelled Ishua from the party, and after that she along with two others doubted and also left the party. When the king heard this, he flared up with anger, and Alan ordered Arya to be quiet. But the king ordered Alan to shut up and began questioning Ishua whether it was true. They reported, it is confirmed, and Alan told him that the party does not need a participant who can only give mana. The king shouted to Alan that the holy swords consume too much mana, so he brought Ishua into their company to cover the mana expenses. Midia also added, Alan tried to capture the dungeon with 3 of them and then left her alone in the dungeon to die. The king no longer needed to listen further, he finally understood. Before he was given the task to investigate Elf Village, Alan was already acting on his own. Then Alan simply lied to him, the king. Alan could no longer talk his way out. Then the prime minister announced a definitive conclusion. From now on, Alan no longer had the status of a hero. Alan asked the king to give him one more chance, he would definitely make a comeback. He asked Ishua and others to join his party, but they no longer intended to believe him. And Arya decided to challenge Alan. If he truly deserves to be a hero, let him start from scratch as a traveler and become a successful adventurer in a short time. Others could feel Arya was speaking not as a saint now, while Alan did not accept this idea at all. The king agreed to this, since from the very beginning Alan did not become a better hero in terms of effectiveness. Moreover, his stupidity almost led to a crisis in their relations with the elves. But he even tried to escape, although he had to report the entire incident. So the king ordered Alan to be branded with the mark of a criminal, and to live with this mark forever. Alan shouted that he would not allow himself to be called a criminal. But this is simply absurd. The soldiers carried him out from there to mark him. Now the king came to announce. He handled the whole matter excellently, so he asked him if there was anything he wanted. Ishua did not feel he deserved such praise, so he immediately stated he had already received sufficient reward from the guild. The prime minister suggested, why not give Ishua a domain and a title? The king liked this idea, but Ishua thought that becoming an aristocrat was too much. Arya told him that for an ordinary commoner, promotion to aristocrat is an event of incredible significance. And Ishua just refused and replied with gratitude, okay, that's all. His decision surprised everyone without exception. And he continued to insist that it is undoubtedly a great honor to be recognized so highly by the king himself. But he was a traveler and sought to go further, to break forward, to conquer even higher peaks. So now he most wants to set out on a journey together with everyone. The king considered his feelings and wished Ishua all the best in his future travels. Then Diana asked Lillian what she would do next. Does she want to travel again together with them both? Or will she now join the party together with Ishua? Lillian felt that this was finally her chance to join Ishua, so she cautiously called him. As soon as her voice was about to reach him, Mithia stepped forward and asked Ishua to take her and Ritara into his team. Lillian lost her chance, while Ishua asked them if they really wanted to go with him and Arya so much, because thanks to their skills they could get into any party. But Mithia and Ritter trusted him more than anyone, and they really enjoyed being with him. Ishua told them that they were exaggerating, and that he would gladly invite them to the party anyway. Diana nudged Lillian, encouraging her to go and convey these words as well. After that, Lillian stepped forward and spoke first. She asked Ishua to take her into his company too. Ishua and the others were a little surprised to hear this. Diana knew the name Lillian sounds like a little child asking to play house. Ishua asked her if she really wanted that. Since she was lucky enough to defeat one of the 4 heavenly demons herself, it means she is skilled enough to gather people into her team. Diana asked what he meant. She reminded him, in the elven village their powers would not be enough. Skilled people like them were needed to move forward. It was not so easy for him to find that, so he looked at Arya and asked what she thought about it. She believed that Lillian was an incredible person and a true heroine, unlike Alan. That is why she wanted to go with her too. After this, Ishua came to his decision and approached Lillian to ask her to accept him and his participants into her party. Lillian shuddered. Everything shifted not as she had planned. She just wanted to join his party. But Ishua was not going to humiliate anyone. The hero deserved to be the party leader without objections. Lillian was so nervous she almost jumped, and she, unable to hold back, asked Diana what to do next. Diana said simply, if Ishua desires it so much, they just have to adapt. After all, no matter how you turn it, they will still travel together. As soon as the party was formed, they announced each person's name and role in the party aloud. Confirmed, the new heroic team is already formed. It is destined to achieve victory over the Demon Lord. Meanwhile, in the Demon Lord's castle, Ifrit, they had to move forward straight into the heart of the swarm. While Undine, one of the 4 heavenly demons, reported, if Ifrit came there, he would be defeated again by the hero Lillian. Ifrit teased, this time her plan was also by no means flawless, and she, they say, did not even guess that she would fail so completely. Then Sylphie, a little demon butterfly, gave the strategy to transfer miasma to the elven village and wipe it off the face of the earth, and by itself it was not bad. And the 4th demon gnome insisted that his mutated King Greg should be strong enough to defeat this little hero. The 4 immediately realized their most insidious enemy was not the hero but Ishua, whose abilities resembled cheat codes. Finally, the Demon Lord spoke. He was interested in whether a human could have so much mana reserve from the very beginning. Undine confirmed the reason was mana expenditure, and the combination of this with his incredible mana control was truly monstrous. And now everything became much more problematic. He had united with the heroine Lillian. Ifrit said there was no choice, they had to act directly without tricks. The Demon Lord agreed. The demons waited until the Demon Lord made a decision. As the Demon Lord explained, from now on they would fight face to face, but so as not to waste strength. Instead, the companion of the human hero would face them. Andina could not understand where to find a hero who would agree to cooperate with demons like them. The Demon Lord, who already had the answer, only needed to show them this hero. It was none other than Alan. He was barely making ends meet and looking for quests every day, almost breaking down since his brand as a criminal became a sentence. Throughout his entire existence, he hated Ishua, blaming him for every misfortune that befell him. And now the Demon Lord's plan was one thing, to lure the fallen hero to his side. Meanwhile, Ishua and the others were riding in a carriage. As soon as they were near the territory of Amdius, Lillian officially informed him. Ishua asked her to address him informally, saying that now they were on the same level. Lillian stubbornly could not get used to it. And he tried the same with Mithia and Ritteru. They also would not drop the formal address. He remembered, it had already been a week since they founded their new party, and now they were heading on their first mission to deliver the White Dew Elixir to the territory of Imdia. It seems Lord Imdia is the same nobleman whom Mithya and Ritaru met earlier. She told him that they helped with the carriage back then after all. She herself was transporting the same White Dew Elixir. After this, they set off to the Lord's estate to escort the carriage. When they arrived, they saw people suffering from an unknown disease, and at that time there were only the Lord's daughter and a few servants there, so it turns out they need much more, which means there are many more sick people now. He was worried about the people inside, so he ordered the coachman to speed up. Diana, who was walking outside for their safety, informed them when they would reach the Lord's estate. And as soon as they arrived, Lord Amdia himself came out to the entrance to greet them. He was sincerely glad to see Mithya and Ritaru again. And Mithya did not expect them to return so soon. She laughed joyfully, seeing that the Lord's daughter seemed to be feeling well. And the fact that he still needed a large amount of elixir meant only one thing: the number of sick people had increased even more. Amdia admitted strange diseases had spread in their area. The doctors still could not find the cause, only the highest rank healing potion, White Dew Elixir, saved them. Ritaru finally figured out why recently the number of quests to collect Ringersu herbs suddenly went up. Ishua assured Lord Imdia that they would gather even more herbs and elixir from neighboring territories and bring everything here. But Lillian did not believe this would save the situation. Listen to her. When she asked Lord Amdia to allow them to investigate this strange disease, he didn't even think to ask for their help, and then Lillian apologized to Ishua for taking on the investigation, even though their main task was to deliver the elixirs. Ishua was not worried about it at all. He decided that during the transportation of the elixir to other villages, they would definitely find the cause of the disease. Before, he hadn't even thought to uncover its source, but now he was grateful to Lillian for the idea. He was sure that she truly behaved like a heroine, so he would trust her decisions. Lillian was touched by his faith in her, but then he asked her to informally call him simply Isua. She said that for now it was impossible. Then Arya asked Lillian why she even wanted to investigate. Lillian replied that after she defeated Ifrit, he said something like that in everything happening in Undine, a treacherous plan was already maturing, which would inevitably lead people to where they belong. Lillian was surprised as soon as she heard those words, and as if it was almost ready to reveal the plan. But he silenced them so they wouldn't guess. They were planning to attack the world tree with monsters and wipe the elven village off the face of the earth. And then it simply disappeared. The teleportation spell worked. Ishua, Arya, and Lillian felt that something bad was about to happen right now, but they did not know that they had already resolved that situation. Soon they reached the next village, and Lillian ordered them to start unloading the cargo. The coachmen thought that this was some strange company. They believed not only would they complete their mission, but they would also start investigating the source of the problem. Although they could have waited, and the reward for the transport mission would have grown over time. Medea decided that this was a cunning trick, but Ishua immediately reminded her not to think that way. Mithya said she was just joking, and then Ishua replied that it was a relief to see a good-natured leader in the party. Even more than hymns. Now they began distributing elixirs and simultaneously investigating where this disease came from. The doctor responsible for the patients here informed them that everyone was kept in a hut hastily built. And as soon as they got there, they saw a whole bunch of sick people with painful grimaces on their faces. Lillian and others were confused when they realized there were too many people there. The number was simply off the charts. The doctor said that in other similar huts there were still patients, so together there were about 100 people. Since the cause had not yet been determined, they had to continue applying healing magic and leave the rest to the patient's immune system. For now, they were at least glad about the working medicine, the White Cure Elixir, but it was not possible to supply it in sufficient quantity to cope with all the sick who needed it. Ishua concluded that this was beyond his competence, but he still wanted to help somehow, as Lillian did, by requesting an investigation. He asked if he could examine the patient's condition. The doctor did not object at all. It was an honor for him to receive support from a hero who defeated one of the 4 heavenly demons, as well as from the monoporter who saved the world tree. Ishua approached the sick man, pressed his forehead to the man's forehead, and carefully examined the body. He wanted to find out if the patient had fallen victim to the schemes of the demon lord. After observation, Ishua immediately noticed something was out of place. Then he informed everyone the man's monobalance had broken down, so he was nauseous. The doctor did not fully understand what Ishua meant, and he explained further. The boy had an extremely meager amount of dark mana. Because everyone is born with a mana balance, a foundation that holds a tiny fraction of each mana trait. If even one of them is shifted from equilibrium, the person begins to get sick. The doctor was amazed. Ishua felt the mana flow so subtly it was enough to touch the person. Then make the assumption that he could also adjust the mana balance. He spent only a few seconds, and the patient suddenly felt completely well. As if he had not been sick. The patient's mother rejoiced, her son was healthy again. Then the doctor remembered. This is one of the white elixirs that restore the monobalance in the body. Ishua also examined other patients, each had the same symptoms. But the doctor had never heard any story about a person who could not only carry mana, but also freely control the mana of each attribute at will. Ishua decided to help people one by one, while Arya applied healing magic to ease their pain until the right moment came. She covered the entire building with healing magic, and the doctor saw miracle after miracle with his own eyes. Ritteru also decided not to stand aside, he helped in preparing the elixir. Lylan decided to investigate the village, because the people were not just sick, they had fallen ill due to a lack of dark mana. Diana and Mythia set out to the villagers to ask questions and get advice. Ishua even shone brightly upon seeing. Everyone had already found their role and was doing everything possible to help. So he immediately took up his part of the work. A little later, the village head joined the affairs along with the rest of the staff. As soon as he saw Ishua coming out of the hut, he asked how things were and if he had found anything. Ishua replied, now they had only one problem, even those patients who had just recovered already wanted to help them. Arya rejoiced, it seemed that now everything was fine with them. The villagers believed that this was a true miracle. They shouted and called out Ishua's name, and could not believe that they had the honor to witness a new legend. Tell them that they are exaggerating, and then everything will become possible thanks to everyone's help. Suddenly Lillian returned from the investigation. She immediately told everyone that she had found an important clue. As soon as this was announced, hope flared up in everyone. They began to believe that Ishua was their leader. Ishua corrected them. Lillian was the leader, and he also noticed that among those who supported them, there were even members of their party. Meanwhile, outside the village, people with the mark of criminals on their faces were preparing for some kind of conspiracy, and they ordered the newcomer to perform his first job without any refusals. And they also sold medicine to that village, where they themselves were from, when people there suffered from disease. The newcomer asked why this was necessary, and it turned out that all these medicines were fake, and also had severe side effects. The criminal ordered the newcomer to simply accept his new life as a criminal, and it turned out that this was Alan, a former hero. After Alan was branded as a criminal, he tried to take a task in Knobbish Town, but he was not even allowed to take E-rank quests. The receptionist made it clear to him without any hesitation. He could only take leftover quests because he bore the mark of a criminal. Alan cursed everything, and in the end, he could not even afford to take any normal, profitable quests. He thought that he was the cause of everything and that it was his own fault. And so on, now he could no longer even pay for a night at the inn. Then some criminal named Criminal Guild approached him. They called him a former hero, and Alan asked that man, who is he? The man directly approached Madir and stated that they brought him a very successful task. Alan recognized those guys were actually people from the Criminal Guild, and he ordered them to get lost. He would never stoop to the Criminal Guild. The criminals gave Alan good food and he could not resist. Since he was really hungry, he gave in to temptation. And he directly stated he would decide whether to take the quest or not as soon as he listened to them to the end. While he was eating in the carriage, then the criminal ordered him to eat outside the carriage because he was assigned to guard the carriage. After a quick snack, Alan jumped out of the carriage. And again, everything cursed him again. He had to get involved in the affairs of the Criminal Guild. He thought it was a one-time story, and after the money earned in this quest, he would finally remember his life. So he began asking others what exactly was in the cargo. They answered him, these are medicines. They plan to sell them in the village where the disease broke out and make money from it. At first, Alan perceived it all as normal, legal work, until the criminal told him what these medicines were called Phoenix pills, because supposedly a miracle happens immediately after using them and people decide, that's it, the problems are over. But over time, the psyche begins to falter and the headaches become simply unbearable. In the kingdom, even possessing this medicine was considered a crime. And just think, Alan was helping them transport this. The last ounce of humanity in him made him feel, if he disappears from sight now, he will betray the quest he was supposed to complete here. But the criminals reminded him he had already eaten a lot of food and had even heard about their plan. So simply disappearing, if he wanted to leave, they could not allow him. Alan already felt that escape could mean real trouble. But the criminals reassured him. They said they would sell the medicine and head to the next village as soon as the side effects made themselves known. Alan realized these were true degenerates, and he did not want to be like them. And when they approached very close to the village, he was entrusted to go there and sell these medicines. So Alan was forced to go to the village. There he distributed announcements about medicines from the royal capital, which supposedly could cure all diseases. A villager who heard him fell silent for a moment. Alan thought who would believe such a suspicious claim, but after that the villager looked at him with admiration. There was only one thought. Such treatment was done in the royal capital itself, and this man took it upon himself to deliver them all the way here. The peasant led him along the road to the village. Alan could not comprehend that it really worked. In the village, he immediately saw a crowd gathered in the very center and felt that everything would end badly. The peasant explained to him that some time ago a company of heroes had come to the village and healed everyone, and Alan was already beginning to notice a strange pattern. And as always in all this turmoil, none other than Ishua suddenly appeared. Even here, they treated him kindly. More women gathered around him, and it looked quite natural. And if he continues to build his fame like this, Alan knows for sure, Ishua will go down in history. But then he was branded a criminal forced to sell fake medicine. Then Alan raised his hand and began. He was even shouting that there is medicine here for everything, everything is cured, and much cheaper than white dual elixir. At first, I recognized Alan at first sight and asked where he got this medicine. The village doctor turned around and faced Sage to inquire what was going on here. And Alan got scared as soon as he remembered that one wise man was very knowledgeable about medicines. So that she would know it immediately, Ritter told everyone that this was just now Phoenix pill. It was a dangerous drug with severe side effects, and even one specimen of it alone already entailed a crime. Alan was sure that's at the end. But then an unexpected reaction happened, as if Alan himself was getting involved in such a matter. Lillian could not ignore this as a heroine. And since it was destined, he grabbed the girl standing nearby as a hostage and screamed piercingly, "It's all because of that monoporter." Ishua shouted, "What the hell is he doing?" Alan ordered everyone to retreat and keep away, only then would this child have a chance to be safe. Lillian showed how low the former hero had fallen, now a criminal. After that, she cast the magic of the fantasy world to lock Alan inside her virtual space. Suddenly, the ground was knocked out from under Alan's feet and he realized he would lose even the child he had taken hostage. He barked, shaking the air, "What the hell is going on?" Lillian answered him calmly. She said she simply transferred him into the space of her imagination. And here he will not be able to take any person hostage. Alan asked them to wait and listen to him first. But he immediately understood. They would not be able to believe a single word of his. They looked at him with hateful eyes. Alan asked if they really thought that Alan would join the criminal guild because he desired it. And even so, the stares of distrust did not cease. So Alan tried to persuade them to give one more chance, and this time he would immediately dive up the ranks. But they continued to look at him with disappointment. And this drove Alan to fury. He hated this to the extreme. So he decided to fight them, enlisting the help of the Holy Sword. Release a new one and this could backfire, turning into problems. So he instantly cast a mana field on them. And Alan again found himself trapped in a barrier-like trap. Suddenly, Alan began to have headaches, which flared up due to excessive mono concentration around them. Previously, Ishua tried to make Alan train in this field of mana. But since he did not train, he could not withstand the heavy density of mana, and eventually he started to have headaches. In such a state, Alan could do nothing, so to bring him to his senses, Ishua was ready to extract all the mana from Alan's body. Alan tried to make Ishua stop. But it was already too late for Alan. He fell unconscious. Then troops were called to take Alan back to the royal capital. While Ishua and others primarily worked on the investigation here, soldiers detained Alan and took him away, and Ishua meanwhile felt only sadness. He thinks that Alan will sell illegal drugs and wear the mark of a criminal. He is tormented by the question of whether this time Alan will be executed, and because of this, the sadness becomes even deeper. Arya told him that it was by no means his fault. Then Diana turned to Lillian with a question. What clue about the disease did she find? Lillian explained to them. The magic circle was cleverly hidden just around the well and was pumping dark mana. He immediately gave the order, "Everyone stay away." Lillian added that there are many such magical circles in the well and in other places near the village. Ishua realized this whole adventure and illness were deliberately artificially caused by someone. Meanwhile, the criminals closely watched Alan, and then they saw how easily he was caught on the very first task. Then they turned to their client. Is this all she really wants? She only smiled, and it was an unequivocal yes. After that, the criminals demanded their reward for the completed work. She threw off her cloak and the guys immediately decided that she would pay with her body instead of money. But they had no idea that she was a demon, so she simply killed them each time they became unnecessary to her. She rewarded them with deaths for doing her work. After that, she pondered whether the former hero Alan who could endure so many trials in the end, he will still rise against humanity. After that, they headed to the source of that disease and reached the place where, as they said, the Calamity Dragon was sleeping. Ishua and the company examined the magic circles and quickly realized there are more of them in other villages and towns. Lillian said that this thing seems to strike only those with low magical powers, so they pondered where exactly this mana was gathering. It remained in question whether this was even part of the Demon Lord's plans. And for now, to issue the order, let him dispel them all at once. That would ensure everyone's safety. They guessed that it would take a lot of time to remove all the magic circles in the territory. Ritteru believes that there must be a basic mechanism that controls the stolen mana. And regardless of what it is for, everything must be gathered in one place. So if they destroy that center, then they would manage to handle the situation without unnecessary hassle. Ishua decided, If he relies on mana sense, he will find the center, and along with that, he made a few changes to the magic circle. But this was unexpected even for himself. He undertook to do what magical experts now found harder and to adjust the process while it was still working. It was necessary to do everything exactly so that the criminals would not even suspect. They are being tracked in the reverse direction. He outlined the entire sequence, what exactly the technique does and how it works. And they did not understand a single word of his explanations, but they firmly knew he could be relied upon. On him, Issue began slowly, drop by drop, pouring his mana into the magic circle. And from his perspective, it was like merging with the mana. You see exactly where it moves around the circle. He noticed that the mana flow was contracting into one point. An incredible volume of mana could be released there. And this point was somewhere near the mountains where the water sources come from. He asked the others to quickly bring him a map. Then he drew a cross on it and stated that at the foot of this mountain, there must be a large cave. All the mana flowed there. Lillian was stunned as soon as she saw that place. She had heard the legend about the white-scaled dragon who left his mark right there. The white-scaled dragon was also known as the Disaster Dragon. The name explains almost everything. In the legend, his fury was described in such a way that it chilled the soul. Ishua and others did not waste time and headed to the place there. They came across the cave of Disaster Dragon. And Ishua froze, imagining that such a large amount of mana could be hidden so neatly. He caught the feeling of traps ahead and immediately warned the others about them, and everyone was glad that he was here to sense them. Medea stated that Disaster Dragon is a dragon from fairy tales, which supposedly destroyed many countries, and that in the past many heroes tried with all their might to seal it away. Lillian said that this place was originally intended as a rank dungeon, and somehow the party accidentally reached the very end and came across Disaster Dragon, who was soundly sleeping deep inside. Since then, the entrance to the cave was blocked by a huge boulder, but now it is clear. Someone removed it and deliberately opened the cave. Ishua felt relief. There is a hero nearby who gained access to the state's secret information. This made everything quite interesting for the hero if he is really to be part of his team. Lillian added that someone is sending a colossal amount of dark mana here. This could very well mean that someone was trying to awaken the Disaster Dragon. She knew if they reported to the king, he would immediately send the royal army, but that would take too much time, and the dragon would most likely already wake up because of their actions. So they needed to act quickly and not let the Disaster Dragon awaken. However, Medea was worried. This place was supposed to be allocated for a ranked dungeon, so she had no doubt strong monsters would be waiting there. She could not forget her last horror in the ranked dungeon, where she almost died. Eventually, the party encountered monsters and Medea took upon herself the role of vanguard to clear the way while. After her, Ishua was stunned. During the fight as a pair, they did not need to restore mana at all. They could continuously advance and strategically conserve it. Ritter noticed that the mana split into two paths ahead, a trap to confuse the newcomers. Lillian took responsibility instead of him. Here she applied skill mapping, and it gave her only a little clarity about her surroundings. She ordered everyone to keep to the right. After that path, Arya came across a map and immediately asked what the dots on it meant. She rushed to explain to them, there is something ahead and this something is very close now. Also, Arya could, sensing any items or treasures nearby, simply reach her hand into the map and pull them out from there without going there. There, it was a skill of the full cheat level, which made the hero completely penniless. Broken, Mythia recalled that last time in the ranked dungeon it was very difficult. But compared to that, now with their current party it was somehow easier. Eventually they reached the very depths of the dungeon and opened the gates. Careful whatever happens behind that door. From inside came a foul stench like rotten meat. And they found out the remains of a dead dragon were used as a base for experiments by some suspicious guys. Ishua and the whole company saw the dragon rotting alive. Don't they understand that this could turn into danger for them? But the leader of the suspicious guys immediately shouted at Ishua and his company. To wander here, Ishua was surprised those guys turned out to be humans. But don't they see that doing something so dangerous for humanity is the height of madness? Lillian introduced herself and exclaimed that she got here after investigating the disease. And the local people recognized in Lillian the one who defeated their master, Ifrit. That is, these invaders are enemies of the Demon Lord. Medea shouted that these guys are followers of Demon Lords, and they themselves are from the Society of Divine Chaos Divine Guide Society. It was a complete den of crazy religious fanatics. They worshipped the Demon Lord and believed that only death would save humanity. Lillian turned to the man and asked, are they doing all this by the demon's order? Lord, the man replied, we have never met the demon, but if they manage to revive the Disaster Dragon, he will definitely come to recognize us. Ishua could not believe it. These guys were doing all this just so that the Demon Lord would acknowledge them, and so many people suffered because of their methods. Now the sectarians did not even let the heroic team stand in their way, so they immediately started the attack. And Lillian ordered everyone to capture these people without any killings. The man reminded them, They also came here after defeating this dungeon, so they will not leave just like that. But then Midia defeated one of them in a second, and their confidence crumbled. The others were also significantly stronger than the guys from the cult. Right from there, some of them were immediately captured. The cult leader could not believe that the wave was overwhelming him, and he quickly moved to the backup plan and tried to revive the dragon Misfortune in an unfinished state. Lillian tries to stop him, but the cult bastard just pushes forward and forces the catastrophe to be restored. Dragon, even if because of this he could be blocked from the path to life. Suddenly the whole place trembled wildly, and the concentration of dark magic sharply jumped around the body of the dragon driver. The very next moment they felt trembling throughout the entire territory. How the cult bastard managed to succeed and awaken the catastrophic dragon. The dragon opened its frightening eyes and released dragon breath so powerful that it pierced a hole through the entire mountain. Asuya and the others suddenly felt as if they were forcibly thrown out of the cave. But the truth was different. The dragon breath destroyed the ceiling in a matter of seconds. They were in despair as soon as they saw the scale of the threat. The disaster dragon could wipe entire territories and countries off the face of the earth with a single breath, so that means it must be at least an S-class monster. The cult guy trembled with fear. Real trouble was falling right on him. When the ominous calamity dragon woke up and it released such a terrifying gust that it caught everyone off guard. They were still in shock because the dragon so easily wiped out the entire cave ceiling. It seemed the next attack would be another suffocation strike. But then the right hand of the calamity dragon tore off from its place and flew away. It roared just as it charged and burst forth with dragon breath. This shot was fired very close to the place where Ishua and the others were standing. The dragon breath was enough to destroy half the mountain for tens of kilometers. They saw Diana frozen right at the site of the destruction before them. And to think they survived only because the dragon lost its balance, its body had not yet finished collapsing. They issued a warning to the cultists and ordered Lillian to isolate them, along with the dragon, from the rest of the recreation area. She unfolded a fantastic world around them. Only Calamity Dragon and members of his team were allowed inside. Diana could not even imagine that she would one day have to face Calamity Dragon from Legends. Now they could no longer hold back for a moment. One mistake could immediately cost them their lives. Lillian enhanced Diana's sword, and it flew further to land a clean strike diagonally across the dragon's body. Ritteru unleashed the strongest lightning strike and hit Calamity Dragon with a direct blow. Misha also revealed his strongest move, Grim Lancer, and swung the magical sword. And then they began to wonder, did any of the strikes hit at all? The same, but when the dust finally settled, Diana could not hide her surprise. She froze upon noticing that the dragon did not have a single scratch. This meant only one thing: they were nowhere near capable of dealing with such a creature. And Diana shielded the others from the dragon's claw. The dragon tore a bit of the surface of the fantasy world, and this was the first such moment for Lillian. This precisely showed how incredibly powerful the dragon was. Ishua told everyone even a light scratch from such a blow could be fatal. For them, this was an attack that meant instant death. Their strikes did not cause significant damage. Lillian was looking for a way to fight this creature. And then St. Arya unleashed her strongest move, Holy Nova, directly at the dragon. And to everyone's surprise, she actually managed to pierce a hole in the side of the Calamity Dragon's body. They were glowing. They had gotten such things that worked even despite that catastrophe. So the conclusion was obvious. The reason was that Saint's light magic is the complete opposite of dark monofuel dragon. And then Arya noticed the dragon was regenerating right before their eyes. The situation became even more complicated. Diana asked Ishua, can't he cleanse the dark mana just like he did before? Ishua shook his head. It was impossible because so much dark mana was infused into the dragon's body. And the fact that this could kill them instantly left them with zero chances even to approach and try something similar. Everyone was convinced there was no hope left in this matter. But Ishua did not think so. If the dragon fully recovered, then yes, anything could happen. But if Arya's attacks worked on him, they might somehow survive. Then he told everyone that he had a plan, but it was deadly risky and he needed them to fully trust him. They agreed to the plan even before he explained it, because they knew Ishua and his whole team would not let them down, so the entire squad relied on him. So they wouldn't have to think twice and risk their lives carrying out the order. Ishua moved forward to listen to how they voiced it and decided, in this matter, he would do everything in his power. And he ordered everyone to strike him with their strongest magical attacks. It came as a surprise to everyone. And after he laid out the entire plan to them while they distracted the dragon, everyone agreed with the plan, and Diana and Lillian had to hold the dragon's attention a little longer. Meanwhile, Arya approached and asked him if he was really sure that. After he confirmed, Arya rushed against Holy Nova, Rittoru against Thunder Magic, and Midia charged Grim Lancer, and all three launched attacks simultaneously at the target. Isu was trembling with fear. Any of these three attacks could kill him instantly. But it was necessary. His plan was to change the nature of the attacks. He had never tried this before, but he knew it was possible. Done, Ritteru as a sage knows. It is possible, but even if you manage to change the attribute of a magical spell, the conversion efficiency still ends up too low. Recently, he seemed to have found a way to maintain conversion at 100, and this shocked everyone because they know well that it doesn't work that way. But Ishua developed his own method to convert everyone's magic into holy magic, so they could deliver a stronger and more effective strike against the Calamity Dragon. So they realized, if they don't kill the dragon with one blow and instantly their plan could fall apart. Ishua told them, if he is defeated and dies, they must retreat and wait for some time until the king's army arrives. Arya shouted that she would never allow him even to think about that, and begged him not to die. If she had known that something terrible had happened to him, her heart would have broken from grief. Now in the present, Ishua was already prepared to use Holy Nova as the basis. But first, he had to take everything under control, casting magical spells to analyze Arya's Holy Nova. He knew her attacks well, so he instantly analyzed them and took control. Next was Ritteru's thunderous attack. Next, Ishua was still not very familiar with her spells like thunder, so he needed a few seconds longer than Holy Nova. Ritteru succeeded amazingly. He turned her storm magic into a sacred attribute. And now he only had to deal with one more. The cursed sword attack of Misha. He had long observed her sword but never managed to fully analyze it. Now he needed to gather all his strength if he wanted to control it. He already felt maybe he wouldn't make it in time. Others saw him standing in that spot and, until the blows reached him first. While everyone was fussing around Ishua, he suddenly realized he would have to cast Mana Field to slow down the attack and buy at least a little time. Even if it is just a moment during this time, he managed to think of another crazy spell to save his life. While they thought Ishua attacked Grim Lancer, out of fear Arya managed to call his name. When the dust settled, it became clear. He managed to dismantle Grim Lancer and analyze it. Well then, combine all three attacks so that they successfully merge into one magical sphere. Ishua stabilized the magical sphere and Ritteru immediately realized he had already cast Mana Field. Ishua told them that Mana Field can also slightly twist the rules of spacetime, and the words hung in silence when they heard that it can create a subspace where time slows down. Arya recalled the last mage who could control time lived hundreds of years before. And now only one thing remained for Ishua to launch the magical attack. At that very moment, the disaster dragon noticed the magical sphere in his hand and turned to attack. Instinct suggested that he was planning something truly dangerous. They needed to distract the dragon from Ishua, so Mythia took a risk and swung her sword from the side. While Diana struck the leg, they were cursed the blow did not cause any damage. At the same moment, Arya released Holy Nova and hit the dragon's left wing. Arya managed to draw the calamitous dragon into battle and attract its attention to herself. And she ordered him to do it right now, as soon as she launches the boosted Holy Nova at the dragon. Dragon and the dragon also released Dragon Fire to intercept his attack. Ritter noted such a decision is bad at this pace, their advance will simply be nullified. If Shua is cursed, their efforts will be in vain. He spent everything, but it turned out to be just a joke. He was using his control over that magical power. And she enchanted Saint Diana's sword with this. She swung down with a mighty blade in which holy power lived. And that was the very plan they had conceived. Ishua will release boosted Holy Nova. As soon as the dragon notices them, he will enchant Diana's sword and she will deliver the final blow. Diana was already prepared to take the hit herself exactly for the final step. And she split the Calamity Dragon in half from the inside into two parts. In response, a huge explosion thundered. There the Holy Dragon was finally defeated, but while all the girls were jumping for joy over their victory, he himself still could not feel happiness, because now he needed to find a way to bypass the incoming dragon wreath flying straight at him. Everyone was worried about him as soon as they noticed this. He missed what he should have thought about, his defense in that flawless plan to defeat the dragon. He began to think about how he would survive, and suddenly remembered a distant, fragmented past. After the lesson, the teacher explained that there are many things people cannot comprehend within the norm. One of these turned out to be a teleportation spell. Back then Ishua was sure he was right and no one could do it. Now that he had mastered magical control, he wanted to try and covered himself with a huge mana field. The density of this field was thicker than anything he had cast before. In this space, he raised the stakes to the point that he could distort space itself. And yet he opened a rift in space and plunged into it. After this, Ishua found himself in a rupture of space-time. Inside, the whole world was beyond the reach of chance. And if he got lost here, he would never be able to return to his original world. He stubbornly focused and long turned over in his head where he should return and finally understood. It was Arya. He wanted to reach her at any cost, and his wild desire suggested the way out he was looking for. Meanwhile, everyone outside was worried about him. The dragon's flame reached the place where Ishua was. Lillian shouted his name and rushed to search, but there was no trace left, none at all. Lillian began to cry, deciding that they had lost him, and the very next moment, A moment fell upon Arya appeared behind, as if out of nowhere. Ishua was momentarily suffering from a headache until he saw Arya, and then he blossomed. She was fine. He told her that he used her as a marker for this world, but she didn't care. She hugged him tightly because she was very scared there. Meanwhile, Lillian was amazed. How did he manage to survive? It shouldn't have been the dragon's breath really wiped that area off the face of the earth. Ritter said that in this situation only teleportation makes sense, and according to modern magic theory, teleportation and time slip-up should also be possible. Ishua recalled how after attempting teleportation right on the spot, he suddenly realized space and time should not be separated, they are one and the same. Ishua told Ritter about this, but he replied that humanity is not yet ready for such a revelation. Even when the theory was confirmed, only someone with magical power similar to Ishua's could accomplish it. Then Midio asked them to leave the complicated conversations for a while, and he added that they should emphasize more strongly. They actually fought and defeated the legendary Calamity Dragon. Lillian told them that they must return to the castle right now and in a few days. They arrived at the royal capital and reported everything that had happened to the king. The king's jaw dropped wide open as soon as he heard that only Lillian and Issue, as part of the squad, had defeated the Calamity Dragon. The king said, even in old tales, only 100 gathered heroes could take the path to seal the dragon. And the fact that they managed to defeat it was much more shocking and impressive. Issue replied that he has not been fully resurrected yet. And the king told them, it doesn't matter because they have forever destroyed a great threat from the land. The prime minister proposed to erect a statue of Issue, and the others right now in the very center of the square. He even ordered to immediately start preparations as soon as the king announced today's celebration. Then Ishua said that he wanted to ask the king one question. The king responded joyfully, what exactly happened? Ishua recalled that Ishua should already be here now, so what happened to him? The faces of the king and the prime minister tensed sharply. Ishua had no good news from this. Ishua and the whole company were extremely cautious. Everyone was afraid of what could have happened now. Then the king gave an order to one of the soldiers to deliver the report to the administration. As soon as Ishua received the report, he learned something terrible. Alan had already become a wanted man. He asked the king what this meant, and the king told him the whole story of what happened. So Ishua went to the place where he heard exactly how this event occurred. Everything happened, and he still cannot believe that a herd of monsters appeared so close to the royal capital. The soldier said that the reports were true, and that he himself also belonged to those who transported Alan. While he was being transported, Alan again and again tried to persuade them to release him, to arrange it as if he had died and let him escape. He reasoned that if the rumor spread and everyone decided that the former hero had sided with the criminal guild, trust would be shaken even towards the other hero, and it would end badly for everyone. But Soldier James did not even dare to think about releasing Alan. And just then someone told the captain there is something ahead on the road. James looked ahead and also saw figures quickly approaching them. He looked more closely and realized it was a whole pack of monsters rushing straight at them. He quickly ordered one of their men to jump out behind and run to the city to report what was happening here, while he and the rest here pushed back the monsters and did not let them break through further. Alan found the situation insanely strange. At the very moment he was being dragged after arrest, a whole monster horde could explode. He was sure his luck was really failing him, but he just did not realize that this could become his chance to break free. Alan called James and ordered him to untie him, assuring he also wanted to fight the monsters. James, however, suspected that Alan was just trying to escape, but Alan insisted that he was still a former hero and did not want to die somewhere in such a place. James was not going to think about it until Alan pressed him a couple more times. But James only sighed and decided now there was nothing to be done. He pulled the shackles off Alan and ordered everyone to watch carefully so that the monsters would not attack the carrot. But Alan bared his teeth now that he was finally free. When James returned and gave Alan the order to take the left, James was suddenly overwhelmed by an attack. Alan rushed into the attack unexpectedly and fled, even calling the soldier a fool. Alan also took away the mana potions they had while retreating, leaving the soldiers to die under the pressure of the monsters. Record Issue immediately felt sick as soon as he heard what Alan had done. James felt guilty for having believed Alan at all. Arya finally realized what exactly caused Alan to become wanted, and the thought that he had once been a hero sounded pathetic. Then James remembered another surprise. As soon as Alan fled, the monsters suddenly stopped attacking and retreated. Diana decided that it was almost the same as the horse avalanche in Elf Village. The villain noticed, when all the monsters suddenly froze and retreated, both then and now their movements were strangely coordinated. Then some soldier brought a person who witnessed what happened here. Ishua asked the villager what happened here that day. He replied that he came across a pack of monsters around the same time, and in the middle of them was a strange mother. She looked like a beautiful woman with a transparent body, like water. St. Arya guessed that this was one of the 4 heavenly demons, an immortal. And then it all fits. The monsters acted in coordination because she could give them orders. The situation looks as if Undine deliberately saved Alan, but it is unclear why save the hero at all. It is worth trying this at least once and it will become clear. The deeper they delve into it, the more complicated the situation becomes, and tracking Alan's movements is almost impossible. Now he suggested to start by heading to Nabish and resting there. A few days later in Nabish Guild, everyone in the guild greeted Issue with a celebration. And he did not understand what had happened, why they found themselves in such a state. They all heard how Ishuo defeated the legendary Calamity Dragon. In response, the Adventurers Guild decided to advance their careers. To promote Ishuo and Arya to rank, Ishuo does not think there is any sense in this since they did not take many quests but says, that quest appeared exactly when the circumstances became serious, and that Ishuo and others just ended up on the other side on that quest. She also sought to promote Mythia and Ritteru so that they would also be placed in rank. Ishuo cannot believe that they are already rank and that they have even reached this moment, although the path to it turned out to be so difficult. Diana congratulated Ishuo and Arya happily that they knocked out rank A. And now they have to put on a show, as if they will continue to play at the level of their positions so as not to disgrace their ranks. But Mythia knows he will again take residual quests starting tomorrow. Then Lillian told everyone that there would be a big party today, and the very mention of it made Ishuo and Diana prick up their ears. They warned Arya and Lillian not to drink. At that moment an urgent message came from the capital, sent at night. And he told them that an emergency mission had been released. Everyone shuddered. The quest was abruptly, emergency interrupted. And the travelers were on edge, because recently emergency quests kept happening one after another. They already wanted to rest after they had just revived and destroyed the Calamity Dragon. Then the traveler read the content of this emergency task. To protect the Pendulum Fortress from the monster invasion. Lillian recalled, the fortress in the north was a key defensive stronghold against the Demon Kingdom. They could not afford to lose that strategic base, and since they needed help even though they already had hundreds of soldiers, it meant the invasion itself looked like complete madness. And there were also reports that the monsters were acting increasingly coordinated. Recently, the adventurers were worried. If there were so many monsters that even the Pendulum Fortress was barely holding, then to assist in the quest they would have to deploy at least twice the firepower. Lillian guessed that the Demon Lord's plans were about to unfold literally now, judging by how actively the monsters were moving. If that was the case, then the path was already clear. Lillian, as the leader, decided that they would take on this task. When others saw that Ishua and his squad were taking on this task, even though dangers were coming one after another each time new. Recently, they also began to perform this task, and believed that everything would be fine if the hero Lillian party was there. Their Ishua and Lillian were impressed. Their presence alone was enough and it made others act, Diana noticed. So that it would not look like a lie, she stated directly, the world will surely be saved by Ishua and Lillian. In a few days at the gathering place for Pendulum Fortune, the knights met all the travelers here to help them, and he introduced himself as Lime, to say that this word belongs to all travelers, and he eagerly awaited cooperation with the knights. Lime thought that Ishua was the commander, so he was mistaken, but he immediately corrected, it was not him. At that moment the old man's voices rang out. He was shouting at everyone to line up. They must not relax and act randomly, every step must be prepared. Lime told everyone, this old knight is Anya and he once led the Central Knights.